Chapter 49. Guan Shan? What is he doing here? Gao Yi looked at Guan Shan, who was standing in the middle of the factory, in disbelief. She couldn't maintain her cold expression. She came over because she heard the gunshots and cries for help. The more chaotic the situation was, the more advantageous it was for her to use her ability. But on the other hand, her first mission target, Worker B3, was also in this direction. But it was obvious that the woman had become an almost unrecognizable corpse. She had died at the hands of Guan Shan. To be honest, Guan Shan killing a sea-level ability user wasn't something worth making a fuss about. What really surprised Gao Yi was that according to the report of the people sent by the Tan Formation to secretly monitor Guan Shan, he should still be at home. At least 10 minutes ago, he was. It must be known that this iron foundry was more than 20 kilometers away from Guan Shan's home. Crossing more than 20 kilometers in 10 minutes could only be explained by an ability. But the D-level ability user who also died at the hands of Guan Shan had a teleportation range of only 5 kilometers. In other words, Guan Shan's spatial ability, which was still doubtful, was confirmed to exist, and it was very likely that it had at least reached sea level. Gao Yi calmed down and first let herself accept the fact that Guan Shan was a double sea level ability user. She comforted herself. It's just 2 abilities. The dead worker B3 was also a double ability user. In fact, it's not that rare. But in fact, worker B3 wasn't actually a double ability user. After all, she was a controversial immortal, so Guan Shan might be the first case. Gao Yi crouched down and hid on the roof. She didn't go down, but looked around to confirm the situation. She thought, according to the psychologist, it's best not to get close to Guan Shan when he's fighting. The situation below was very clear, but it was worth noting that when Gao Yi came over, she heard someone calling for reinforcements through a walkie-talkie. The closest one to this place should be worker B6, so the next enemy was most likely worker B6. Worker B6 ability is Dream. It can create illusions without anyone noticing. It's best to be vigilant at all times and take action as soon as something abnormal happens. Otherwise, he'll take advantage of the situation. Gao Yi stared at Guan Shan and decided to use him as a beacon. Then Gao Yi saw Guan Shan squatting down and rummaging through the corpse that he had just shot in the head. Suddenly, he broke the corpse's arm and dug out an object that looked like a metal rod. In the middle of the arm was a matching metal groove that connected the surrounding muscles and nerves. Takaya narrowed her eyes. This seems to be a magnetic field generator and control device built into the bones. In this era, espers were naturally not the only dominant force. In other words, thanks to the brain development espers, some technology that surpassed the era had appeared and became a means of struggle. However, these technologies created by superpowered people would not appear in the world of ordinary people by default. As an esper who specialized in combat, it was necessary for Gao Yi to recognize these high-tech products. Previously, she had also fiercely studied them. Therefore, she recognized what this thing was at a glance. At the same time, she also knew that the original owner of this corpse probably didn't have a strong ability and only relied on this equipment to fight. She didn't understand, but what is Guan Shan doing with this thing? Without the built-in groove, the chip in this thing is equivalent to a decoration. In the next second, Guan Shan told her what this thing could be used for. She saw him take the metal rod, tear open the muscles of his arm, and stuff this thing in. Gao Yi's head was filled with a question mark. She looked at Guan Shan's actions in disbelief and began to wonder if this person was seriously ill. Even the most important metal groove that connected the nerves was missing. How could this thing be used just by forcibly stuffing a chip into it? But then, an even more terrifying scene appeared. The wound on Guan Shan's arm healed in an instant. Then, he moved his arm and waved his hand. Immediately, fish scale-like metal sheets floated up from the corpse and flew into Guan Shan's hand. Then, they stuck close to his skin and hid under his sleeve. The magnetic control device worked. How could this work? Gao Yi was stunned. She felt that her cognition was completely messed up and couldn't help but doubt her life. Could it be that the magnetic control device was actually used like this? For Guanshan, this was quite easy to understand. Information about the dropped item appeared in front of his eyes. Skill book, magnetic field nerve, temporary. That's right, it was a skill book. Guanshan really didn't expect this monster to drop a rare item that even the elite monster didn't drop. Unfortunately, this skill book was temporary. Although it didn't require skill points to learn, it would be gone in 10 days. Skill, magnetic field nerve, 10 days countdown. Type, active, temporary. Cooldown, none. Effect, through the use of control device, you can control special metal sheets with your mind. Description, White Emperor's sacred sword. Ride the sword and follow me. Guanshan couldn't help but complain. White Emperor's sacred sword? This monster doesn't look like a Russian at all. The so-called White Emperor's sacred sword wasn't a real sword. It was a traditional opening line that the Russians would shout when they fought in groups. Although it was Russian, the Huaxia people heard it as White Emperor's sacred sword, the number 1 sword in Huaxia. Ride the sword and follow me. Then, a group of people would start fighting each other. It was a reckless move. But if this magnetic field is developed to the extreme, it seems to be sword riding. That makes sense. Guanshan learned a skill and tested it out. After confirming that there were no monsters around, he continued to walk up. It wasn't quiet around. The human skin walls had 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, like a maze. There were howls of monsters everywhere, both near and far. It was frightening. The human skin walls were rotting faster and faster. From time to time, a monster would appear. Guanshan killed it without much effort. However, Guanshan walked for a long time and didn't encounter a second elite monster. Just as he was wondering if he was lost, he saw a familiar figure standing in the distance. Little comrade Shan. Guanshan was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly walked over. Shen Dinghua turned around and said in surprise, "Little Shan, why aren't you asleep yet?" Guanshan was about to say something, but he felt that something was wrong. He turned around and was surprised to find that he was looking at his own home. There were hot takeout and cola on the coffee table, and there was a cartoon on the TV. When he turned back, under the warm light, Shen Dinghua was still smiling. Where were the monsters and the human skin walls? Worker B6 looked at the dazed Guanshan, who stopped not far in front of him. He snapped his fingers and showed a disdainful smile. He thought that the person who could kill Duan Ning would be strong, but it turned out that he was just SOSO, a mere illusion, and he immediately fell for it. P.S. The typhoon is strong, but as long as there is underscore and underscore, the author's heart is warm. Fill in the blank. Chapter 50. Dreamland was the ability to use a certain emotion in the depths of the opponent's heart as bait, trapping the opponent in an illusion. If the opponent was not vigilant, then they would be directly dragged into the illusion. If they were vigilant, then they would need to look for flaws. In Guanshan. In Worker B6's view, he belonged to the former. He was just a fool who had jumped into the trap as soon as the bait was set. Worker B6 calmly walked out of the factory's office. Under the light of the street lamps, the empty factory looked particularly gloomy. Compared to the fierce fighting going on in other areas, this area was extremely quiet. Worker B6 was conceited and didn't let other low-level adepts come over to guard this place. Moreover, his ability was a mental type with a large range, and it was very easy to cause accidental injuries. If he let those good-for-nothings come over, they would only be turned into wooden stakes one by one. He might as well do it himself. Tisk tisk. Worker B6 looked at Guanshan, who was standing there in a daze, and calmly paced around him. He mocked, "Weren't you very brave in the walkie-talkie? You even said something about an extra reward. You said it so casually, I really thought it was a strong enemy." In the end, he was easily trapped in the illusion. Sure enough, all physical-type adepts would be at a disadvantage against mental-type adepts. Worker B6 reached out to take the gun in Guanshan's hand, but when he saw the blood and filth on it, he couldn't help but frown. Worker B6 was a bit of a germaphobe, but in the end, he took out his gun, unlocked the safety, and pointed it at Guanshan's head. He said, "Today, your only extra reward is that you will pay the price of your own arrogance with your death." Worker B6 was about to pull the trigger when he suddenly became alert. He turned his head and saw Gao Yi chasing after him. The girl jumped onto the barbed wire and pressed her hand on the hilt of the long knife at her waist. She said coldly, "You are the one who needs to pay the price for what you have done." She was a little anxious. Because of the psychologist's instructions, she didn't get too close to Guanshan, but she didn't expect him to fall directly into Worker B6's illusion. Worker B6 raised his eyebrows and pointed his gun directly at Guanshan's temple. "Oh, are you really going to do it?" He whistled. "Or are you saying that you want to test whether a knife or a spear is faster from 10 steps away?" Gao Yi's expression didn't change. With a click, she pushed out a section of the blade. "Naturally, your head will fall to the ground faster." Worker B6 laughed. "Do you believe your own words? If you were really confident, you would have already used your saber." He had a nasty expression on his face. "You're still dealing with me, which means you're hesitating." Gao Yi's heart sank, but he didn't show it on his face. "You can shoot me, and then I'll kill you. A life for a life. I'll avenge him." She was actually confident that she could be faster than a spear at this distance. To be more precise, it was faster than the speed at which his opponent pulled the trigger. But now, she needed to accurately determine when the other party would pull the trigger. The best way was to trick the other party into shooting first. "Oh," Worker B6 continued, "do you think as a fugitive I would value my life more? Or would I prefer to see a person who wants to save others show an expression of despair and regret?" He looked at Gao Yi mockingly and whispered, "Are you nervous?" Gao Yi didn't respond. Worker B6's lips arced upwards. "You've encountered a similar situation before, haven't you?" Gao Yi suddenly recalled something, and she paused in surprise. "Oh no, he's activated his ability." Guanshan observed everything in front of him. The living room, the coffee table, the television, the girl, the atmosphere was warm and intimate. The takeout had just been opened, and white steam was rising from it. Water droplets were dripping off the iced cola, and the television was playing the scene of Sakura Sakura being sealed. Outside the window, it was pitch black. Rain was dripping, and the wind was howling. There was even the faint sound of thunder. The girl stood in front of the coffee table, fiddling with the takeout. Her face was red, and she was wearing a thin nightgown. One of the straps had slipped off, and her fair cleavage was faintly visible. Shen Dinghua looked up at him in confusion and asked naturally, "Shan, why aren't you asleep yet?" This atmosphere wasn't like how they usually acted when they were separated by something. Instead, it seemed more like they were a couple who had already confirmed their relationship. His girlfriend was watching television and eating supper, and her boyfriend woke up halfway and came downstairs to catch her secretly eating. This should have been the case. But Guanshan raised his head. There was nothing on the ceiling. The bottomless darkness swallowed everything, and he could even see a part of the wriggling and rotting human skin wall at the edge. It was as if there was an error in the mapping during modeling, and the incomplete scene was stacked with another scene. A game bug. Guanshan was speechless as he looked at this strange scene. He was sure that he had encountered the second elite monster. He was even holding a gun in his hand, and his body was a mess. He didn't fit in with this room at all. According to the plot, I have to let go of my memory when I encounter the second fork in the road. So, the little comrade Shen in front of me is actually a fake? That monster created the appearance of Shen Dinghua in my memory to deceive me? Guanshan looked at the Shen Dinghua in front of him and hesitated. Although he knew that this was fake, the feeling was incomparably real. It was so beautiful that it made him yearn for it. If one day he and Shen Dinghua dated, lived together, or even married, this should be the scene, right? Shen Dinghua blinked. "Shan, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me?" She walked over and held Guanshan's hand. The girl's palm was soft and warm. When her slender fingers brushed against the back of his hand, there was a trace of itchiness. As the saying goes, warm and fragrant jade is nothing more than this. Shen Dinghua looked at the bloodstains on his hand and took 2 pieces of tissue to help him wipe it. She muttered, "Where did you go? How'd you get so dirty?" Guanshan was stunned and shook his head. "I didn't go anywhere. I was just playing a game. This is the monster's blood, not mine." "Do I really have to shoot?" Guanshan became more and more hesitant. Why did he feel that the Shun Dinghua in front of him was the real one? The conflict between his intuition and knowledge made him unable to pick up the gun. After Shun Dinghua finished wiping his hands, she went on to wipe his face. She carefully and seriously wiped his face clean. Staring at his hesitant eyes, she suddenly smiled slyly and said, "Xiao Shan, are you thinking about?" Her tone was soft, like the sweet words between lovers. "How are you going to kill me?" Guanshan opened his mouth in shock. Shun Dinghua said, "It doesn't matter. Shan, you could do whatever you want of me. I will always support your decision." She held Guanshan's hand that was holding the gun, raised it, and pointed the muzzle at her heart. Her slender fingers pulled the trigger in reverse. Guanshan suddenly raised his head. Shun Dinghua tilted her head and smiled brightly. "After all, haven't you always wanted to kill me?" Bang! The girl fell backwards. Guanshan was shocked and subconsciously reached out his hand, but he didn't catch anything. PS1. Catch a reader and strip them of all their money. PS2. Thank you to Koaching, reader 140-31769-33881401344, book friend 20210715194128342 for your tips. Chapter 51. Just as Gao Yi was thinking that something was wrong, Worker B6 revealed a triumphant smile. After saying so much nonsense, who wasn't testing? Gao Yi wanted to find Worker B6's weakness, but Worker B6 also wanted to induce her emotional fluctuations and make her fall into an illusion. When Gao Yi recalled the scene because of Worker B6's words, the dream invaded her mind in an instant. Her vision was covered by another world, which was the result of her mistake. Although an ordinary person who was also a hostage didn't die, he could only live in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. That was the regret in Gao Ye's heart. This illusion magnified a person's emotions, and as long as it was stirred up, it could make you sink deeper and deeper until you couldn't break free. But it's because of regret that I can't repeat the same mistake. Gao Yi only trembled for a moment before she came out of the illusion. She was vigilant from the beginning, so she clearly knew that this was an illusion. Naturally, she could leave quickly, but no matter how quickly she woke up, she was still distracted for a moment. And that was exactly what Worker B6 wanted. Gao Yi instantly recovered from her confusion, and as soon as she woke up, she realized that she might regret it again. She gritted her teeth and instantly drew her sword. Worker B6 saw that Gao Yi's expression was no longer calm, and how pitiful her eyes were. He was about to see the beautiful gray of shattered hope in her eyes. Worker B6 smiled viciously and pulled the trigger. Asterisk bang. Asterisk there was a sudden gunshot. But it wasn't Worker B6's gun that rang out. Gao Yi, who was drawing her sword, froze in surprise. Coffee. Worker B6 stared blankly at the huge hole in his chest. Flames and blood blossomed together, turning his heart and the surrounding organs into a pile of minced meat. Guanshan, who was in front of him, had unknowingly raised his gun, and his eyes were clear again. Worker B6 staggered back 2 steps, his vision turning dark, his body trembling, and the gun in his hand fell to the ground. "You, cough. How is this possible? You should still be in the illusion." Worker B6 was sure that his illusion hadn't been dispelled, which was why he dared to take a C-class ability user hostage. But the truth was that Guanshan had opened fire before the illusion was dispelled. Worker B6 fell to the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief as he muttered to himself, "How is this possible? It's impossible." The triggering emotion in this illusion is clearly love. How could he fire? Could it be that there was a problem with his ability? No, it couldn't be. His ability had never been wrong before. In confusion, regret, pain, and confusion, Worker B6 gradually suffocated. She struggled like a drowning fish without any dignity. The room collapsed instantly. The television, the coffee table, the takeout, the heat in the house, and the raindrops outside the window were all gone. At the same time, the girl who had fallen backward also disappeared. Shun Dinghua's smile and blood were shattered into pieces and scattered in the invisible wind. Guanshan's outstretched hand didn't catch anything. But before he had time to feel sad, the world in front of him returned to the dark and treacherous border of hell. The one who fell wasn't the girl, but a slender, humanoid monster with a face like an octopus. The monster's limbs were extremely long claws, its skin was dark green, and its body was wrapped in a piece of tattered black cloth. Its face had 2 golden eyes, and then its mouth that was divided into countless tentacles. It looked like a person whose head had been replaced by an octopus. Grr, grr. The monster's body was covered in incendiary residue from the incendiary bomb. Its chest had exploded, and it roared in pain in an incomprehensible language. Guanshan was stunned. Shun Dinghua's last sentence was still lingering in his mind. I have always wanted to kill her. Guanshan felt that this was ridiculous. How could one kill Shun Dinghua? On the contrary, if someone wanted to harm Shun Dinghua, he would definitely be the first to risk his life. This monster's professional level wasn't high enough. Its bewitching illusion was so messy. Not to mention the transmigration model, it couldn't even do the most basic inducement. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't little classmate Shin come out and act cute? He definitely wouldn't be able to do it, and then he would be poisoned by this monster. How could it be like this? Not only did it not make him hesitate, it even helped him fight the monster. Guanshan looked at the monster lying on the ground struggling and couldn't help but complain in his heart. The monster's information didn't appear until now. Mind Stealer, Spirit Sucker, LV, 9, HP, 10,900 description. When you realize that you're dreaming, you will wake up from the dream. I feel that under normal circumstances as the second elite monster, this monster shouldn't be pulled like this. Since its HP is lower than normal, this monster's ability should be very strong. In the end, the difficulty is not even 1/10 of the first monster. Guanshan shook his head and thought, it can only be said that Comrade Shun is blessing and made this monster's ability go crazy. The Shun Dinghua in the illusion was actually very real. Otherwise, Guanshan wouldn't be unwilling to break the illusion even though he knew that this monster was an enemy. Many of her actions were very consistent with Shun Dinghua's character. Even Guanshan, who had been Shun Dinghua's childhood friend for many years, almost thought that it was real. If Shun Dinghua hadn't come at the end, he might have really fallen. Guanshan touched his chin. Could it be that the Comrade Shun in my memory is too obedient? So even in the illusion, she would help me instead. As for wanting to kill Shun Dinghua, it was impossible. Guanshan just treated it as a joke. After a period of continuous HP loss, the monster on the ground finally died, leaving a ground full of flashing points and a sum of experience. Experience plus 2,500. Oh, it really gives more experience than the first monster. It should be more difficult, so there really is a problem with the illusion. Guanshan nodded and confirmed his guess. He sighed that his luck was really good today. He was about to loot the corpse when he suddenly heard a movement. Guanshan immediately turned his head and shone his flashlight over. He saw a girl he had never seen before jumping down from a human skin wall. Guanshan subconsciously tightened his grip on his pistol and prepared to shoot. But it wasn't a monster. The simulator sounded at the right time. You have encountered an NPC. Guanshan typed a big question mark. I played for so long, and you're telling me that there are NPCs in this game? PS1. Readers haven't cast your monthly votes yet. Chidian has an event at the end of the month. Cast your monthly votes from 7.29 to 8.4. Double the reward. Every night from 20 points to 24 points. You will be tipped 1,500 points. By default, you'll cast 4 monthly votes. Hope to support. PS2. Thank you very much for your tipping. Ugh. Chapter 52. It turned out that in this simulated scene, other than the monsters, there were also NPCs that could be interacted with. Guanshan looked at the NPC that suddenly appeared in surprise. He felt that he had discovered a new continent. This NPC looked like a female swordsman with a long sword at her waist. She was dressed in white and wore a veil hat. Her face under the black veil was a little blurred, but her sharp chin and light red lips showed a bit of immaturity. However, although she looked like a human, no scolding, she literally looked like a human. But the girl in front of him was definitely the same as those monsters. She was simulated by the simulator and was part of the scene. People in real life would definitely be like Comrade Shin. They could neither see the monsters nor the scene, nor would they be affected by them. Didn't you see that last time when Guan Shan fought with a monster directly in front of Shin Dinghua? She was not touched by the monster, right? This was a real person. That was why Guan Shan tried his best to hide the fact that he had appeared in certain places to avoid the exposure of his fight with the air, which would lead to a social death. Guan Shan, vaguely, felt a sense of familiarity with this NPC girl. He felt that he had seen such an image in many places, and he suspected that the dog simulator had directly created a character from a random online game. As he stared, the NPC's information was displayed in front of him. A passing swordsman. LV-15. Health points. 5,000. Description. She is obviously a stranger, but a nameless swordsman wandering around the border of hell, as if she is looking for something. Asterisk note. NPCs may be useful help. Talk to her carefully, and you may have unexpected gains. Level 15. Guan Shan was so shocked that he leaned back. This was the highest level of existence he had seen so far. The previous few monsters were only at level 10, and they had beaten him to death. He had to rely on items and luck to barely kill them. It could be said that he had narrowly escaped death every time. But the NPC in front of him was actually at level 15. It was simply terrifying. It was hard to imagine how strong this person was. And although she was at level 15, her health points were only 5,000. According to the previous templates, the reason why her body was so fragile was either because her attack power was unimaginably high, or she had a special ability. But no matter what it was terrifying. Guan Shan couldn't help but rejoice. Thank goodness it's an NPC. If it's a monster, I would have died here today. As he thought this, he suddenly had a bad feeling. Wait a minute. If the NPCs that could help were already so strong, then wouldn't the boss of the breakthrough mission be even stronger? Thinking up to this point, Guan Shan felt that he had to hold on tight. Without this NPC's help, he definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them. The female swordsman walked in front of him. Seeing that he was unharmed, she seemed relieved. She looked at the corpse of the monster on the ground and said, "This guy's ability is not easy to deal with. I didn't expect you to wake up so quickly." This familiar tone, Guan Shan raised his eyebrows. Originally, he had assumed that this NPC would be a cold and aloof NPC. He never imagined that this NPC would actually be a warm-hearted one. Gao Yi looked at his surprised expression and said seriously, "Hello, Guan Shan. I'm Machete Man." His code name was Machete Man. But before she joined the 10 formation, she had already made a name for herself among the adepts. So many people knew her name. Giving out her code name only meant that she was officially getting to know him as a member of the 10 formation. It was a showdown. Since Guan Shan could know the movements of the killer bees like the back of his hand, then he should also know their identities. Introducing herself like this was actually a bit unnecessary. But Gao Yi thought that it was still necessary for her to show her sincerity. Otherwise, the other party wouldn't be so open and honest. How did this NPC know his name? Guan Shan blinked, a little confused. But then he thought about it. As the saying went, the more beautiful the skin, the stronger the strength. According to this description, a level 15 boss with such a detached appearance and a ruthless person who could go to hell physically would have the ability to know other people's names. Guan Shan nodded. As he picked up the dropped items, he asked tentatively, "Hello, are you looking for something?" Gao Yi was stunned. What was she looking for? She wasn't looking for anything. If she had to say something, she was looking for Worker Bee 1, who was hiding somewhere, or a stronger member of the killer bees who might appear here. Did that count? This was a good opportunity to get information. She couldn't let it go. As for Guan Shan's slightly different tone from before, she knew that this guy's mental state might be a bit unstable during battle, so she ignored it. Gao Yi nodded and said, "I'm looking for someone, the strongest person here. You know that, right?" She watched as Guan Shan knelt down and skillfully searched Worker Bee 6's body, taking off everything that could be used. She felt that this person wasn't here to be a hero, but to rob and rob. The killer bees were such a vicious organization, but to him, they were like pigs that contributed equipment. Guan Shan's eyes lit up. Good Lord, he didn't even need to ask this NPC to join him. This NPC was looking for the boss. He immediately said, "It's high up. I don't know where it is, but it's definitely high up." Guan Shan stood up and turned to shine the flashlight at a neck not too far away from him. Yes, in his view, it was no longer a wall of human skin. It was a long cylinder wrapped in human skin, with a base that looked like a shoulder. This strange scene made it seem as if a person with an extremely long neck was buried in the darkness, and the neck was full of rotting scars. It seemed that this was the path to the boss room. Guan Shan's mouth twitched. He tried to overcome his discomfort and said, "Over there should be it." Gao Yi looked in the direction Guan Shan's flashlight was shining. Her eyes narrowed, so it was hiding on the crane. She picked up her sword and prepared to walk over. Guan Shan hurriedly said, "Wait, I still have something to do." "Can you wait?" Gao Yi was surprised, but she nodded and said, "Sure, what do you want to do?" He was surprisingly easy to talk to. Guan Shan smiled politely and said, "I want to kill a few more, Guan Shan suddenly paused and fell into deep thought. According to her style, what should he say about monsters? Got it. He pointed to the deformed octopus man on the ground and smiled gently. "I want to kill a few more of these beasts. Can you wait for me for a while?" This was experience and strength bonus. He couldn't waste it. Gao Yi, PS1. Thank you to Tsunsunin, book friend 20210614175026212, and Red Scale Blackfish for your tips. PS2. Raise the empty bowl eager. Chapter 53. No problem. Of course, no problem. That was the only answer Gao Yi could give. Anyone would probably say no problem when asked by a man who had just created a floor full of corpses and was covered in blood, and who was smiling warmly. After all, in this atmosphere, it was as if you refused, he would pull out a gun and give you a headshot in the next second. The prop would be your head. Gao Yi looked at Guan Shan's back with a strange expression and felt that this man was really strange. To call the members of Killer Bees animals, there had to be a lot of resentment and hatred involved. Thinking about it this way, she could actually understand why Guan Shan knew so much about killer bees. A guess popped up in her mind. Could it be that Guan Shan had actually been a victim of killer bees? Because of this, he had been investigating killer bees for a long time and had come up with a plan for revenge, and now he was just carrying it out. Gao Yi felt that this guess was actually very reasonable. She thought to herself, he clearly kills people like scything flax, and his methods are cruel and bloodthirsty, but he only kills the bad guys, and he even has a strong sense of justice. No wonder the psychologist gave him a personality evaluation of green. The 10 formation actually didn't have very strict requirements for the personality of espers. After all, when an esper lived in a normal society, they would more or less develop some psychological problems. Otherwise, they wouldn't have specially set up a team to recruit espers. Even if these people stayed in the 10 formation for a few years, their psychological evaluation would always be red. So, whether it was green or yellow, as long as they didn't turn red within a certain threshold, they were safe and could be used. There were quite a lot of people like Guan Shan in the 10 formation, but the others weren't as crazy as him. He would kill a dozen people at the drop of a hat, and not leave a single one alive. Gao Yi couldn't help but make a strange connection. Using violence to curb violence. Batman. As she followed Guan Shan, she turned on her earpiece and said, "How's the situation on your side?" Chen Yunpeng said happily, "It's going very well. The screen that Minter Xiao borrowed has already covered the entire factory in his enchantment. No matter what happens, it won't leak out. The main force can set off immediately." Their plan was actually very simple. It was to let Gao Yi launch a solo assault with a few other cannon fodders to attract the enemy's attention and firepower. Then, they would set up a barrier and let the main force enter. They would cooperate with Gao Yi to clear the area and finally surround Worker B1. Now that the two most crucial steps had been completed, the rest was simple. "Oh," Gao Yi coldly said, "you can prepare to retreat now." In front, Guan Shan slaughtered his way through. Those low-level worker bees were killed one by one, two by two. Even the D-class ability users who dared to come over were directly headshot. If headshotting didn't work, then he would take out a chainsaw. The scene became somewhat unbearable to watch. His wounds healed at an extremely fast speed. He only needed to stand at the same spot for a while before he became lively again. In the end, no one dared to approach him anymore. The entire iron foundry gradually fell into a brief and strange silence. Chun Yunpeng and Tang Ji. Xiaolei was stunned and immediately realized that something had happened. He asked what happened. Gao Yi said, Guanshan suddenly appeared here and has already killed Worker Bee 3 and Worker Bee 6. They are now cleaning up the scene. There is no need to send the main force in. Tang Ji was stunned. F***CK, he killed them all. Chun Yunpeng, on the other hand, found a blind spot. No, isn't he still at home? He turned to contact the people who were monitoring Guanshan's house. But the other party told him with a dumbfounded expression that Guanshan did not go out. Chun Yunpeng was also dumbfounded. How did Guanshan come here if he did not go out? Xiaolei asked, Are you with him now? Gao Yi nodded and said, I tried to communicate with him directly, and he's quite easy to talk to. He told me that Worker Bee 1 should be on the tower crane, but the condition is that he has to kill all the killer bees. Hiss, Tang Ji sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of condition is that? This guy is a real killer. Xiaolei pondered and said, Well, since the people have been cleaned up, there is no need to go in. Go all out to fight Worker Bee 1 and try to take down this experimental site in one fell swoop. We will pay close attention to see if there are any other reinforcements. Gao Yi nodded. She looked up and saw that Guanshan had killed another killer bee. Guanshan's gun had become his trademark. This gun was obviously taken from Shuman Lin, and the magazine had never been changed, but the gun in his hand could still fire bullets. The Tan formation believed that this should be one of the uses of his space-type arcana. He seems to be getting stronger. Gao Yi could acutely determine that Guanshan was getting stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. Every time he killed a killer bee, he seemed to become a little stronger. This was quite a shocking discovery. Gao Yi wasn't sure if this was his ability or if it was simply his growth. The two of them circled the entire iron foundry until there were no signs of any living creatures. Gao Yi was already numb. Looking at the corpses and blood all over the ground, she could not even tell for a moment whether the killer bees were an evil organization or they were. She reminded Guanshan, Is it over? Let's go over there. That guy hasn't moved. Something's not right. Guanshan was a little puzzled and pondered. That's not right. There should be 3 forks, which means there should be 3 elite monsters. Why is there one missing? We have already run through the entire area surrounded by the human skin wall. There should be no other place that we haven't searched. Is there a bug in this damn simulator? If we miss an elite monster, our rating will be lower. Guanshan even wanted to run again, but now he was not alone. There was a big boss NPC following him. He had already said to wait for a while. If he delayed any longer, the big boss might run away. This was not advisable. Guanshan could only nod. But looking at the tall neck and the rotting scars, he really did not know where to start. He was a little embarrassed and pondered. Isn't it a little dangerous to climb up like this? Gao Yi shook her head. No need. She took 2 steps back, her left foot back, her body leaning forward. She grabbed the scabbard with one hand and the hilt with the other. Who? Gao Yi took a deep breath, her eyes slightly closed, and then suddenly opened. Sword drawl like a clap of thunder. The sword suddenly split the darkness. Boom! The killer bee stood at the top of the tower crane. He frowned when he suddenly heard a loud noise. He was shocked and instantly felt a violent shaking. He looked down. The entire tower crane was tilting to the side. He was actually cut into 2 from below. P.S. Today when I was writing, I felt a little strange. So it was the readers of underscore. Chapter 54. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The saber light was like a pair of scissors, cutting open a gap in the dark night, revealing a startling ray of light. Compared to Galya's previous moves, this one was simple and unadorned. It was all strength and no technique. The blade cut through the tower, clean and efficient. Guanshan was amazed. Is this the standard of a level 15 boss? It's terrifying. This thigh is so rough. I love it. In his eyes, the strange neck-like thing was directly cut off. A large amount of blood spurted out, almost converging into a river, and a terrifying roar came from above the neck. The roar came from above, echoing in the darkness as if some ancient beast was awakening and roaring. Guanshan raised his flashlight and shone the light. He was so shocked that he started to tremble. At the top of the giant neck was a huge head. The head's eyes were wide open as it stared down. It had no chin, and its mouth was open to the limit. It had no teeth, and there was only wriggling flesh inside. This shouldn't have scared the battle-hardened Guanshan, but the size and the long neck made it look like the underworld. In the next second, the severed neck sprouted countless blood vessel-like things from the joints. They danced and spread to the pedestal below. With a whoosh, they inserted themselves into the pedestal and supported the neck. What was even more frightening was that the entire neck had split open from the middle. Then, the rib-like appendages burst out from the flesh and blood, waving rhythmically. Together with the twisted neck, it was like a huge human-headed centipede. Guanshan broke out in a cold sweat. He took half a step back and looked at the human skin walls around him. Damn, these human skin walls, don't tell me they're part of its body? How I've been walking on its body all this time? Oh my god, this is really scary. Open the F*King door for horror. Guanshan was so nervous that his heart raced. He gripped his gun tightly and retreated, quickly taking stock of all the items he could use. Aside from the assortment of weapons and healing potions, he had also obtained a special item called Xidagarba's Statue, Part 7 from the Spirit Absorber. He also triggered a collection achievement for the combination of items. Xidagarba Statue, 1/7. Effect: activating the corresponding buff will trigger. Collecting all the fragments will unlock Hell is Not Empty ability. Buff 1, Life Locked. Buff 2, Assimilate Locked. Buff 3, Carry Locked. Buff 4, Hide Locked. Buff 5, Hold Locked. Bonus 6, Yes Locked. Buff 7, Immobility Unlocked. Description: calm and unmoving like the earth, quiet and deep like a secret. The only unlocked effect of Buff 7 is as follows. Immovable effect generates a shield with 100% HP for 20 seconds. Cooldown 60s. Description: the heart of Bodhi is as firm as diamond. This item was like a second life. When Guanshan looted this item, he could only rejoice that he had killed the elite monster with one shot. No wonder the monster's basic HP was so low. It turned out that it had 2 HP bars. If he had not killed it in one shot, he might have been ambushed. As Guanshan retreated, he saw from the corner of his eye that the swordswoman had jumped onto the centipede's neck that was bent to the side. She stepped on the ribs and dashed toward the human head without any fear. Her white clothes fluttered in the air, and her long sword drew a zigzag silver light in the air. Blood vessels of the same type as the support at the bottom of the neck kept popping out from the crack in the center. They tried to attack the swordswoman, but the latter raised her sword and chopped off all the blood vessels. In just a few moves, she approached the giant head and drew her sword again, as expected of a boss. She's so brave. Guanshan, who was watching from the back, saw this swift and violent attack. His eyes lit up, and he cheered in his heart. However, he saw that the blood vessels that had been chopped off were squirming again and suddenly bouncing toward him. The opening at the end of the blood vessels were full of teeth. In his field of vision, a message popped up. Blood vessel, parasite, LV6, HP, 600. Description: cut once and turn into 2. F***CK. This is also a monster. Guanshan quickly fired. Bang, bang, bang. The flames of the explosion kept flashing. The monsters rolled in the flames and screamed as they turned into ashes. EXP plus 100, EXP plus 103, EXP plus 92. The notifications kept refreshing in front of his eyes. However, the blood vessels that fell continued to increase. Some jumped in front of Guanshan, and he had to use the chainsaw to resist them. However, once these blood vessels were cut into 2, they immediately jumped twice and grew 2 mouths each, turning into 2 lower-level parasites. Cut once and turn into 2. Is this thing an earthworm? Guan Shan's heart sank. He looked up and saw that not only did the girl not reach the head, but she was also forced back by the blood vessel monsters that suddenly multiplied in number. The faster the girl's knife was, the faster the blood vessel monsters multiplied. Soon, they formed a wave that was larger than the human head and pressed down aggressively. Guan Shan immediately reminded her loudly, "Don't cut with a knife. There will be more and more. Unless you destroy it directly, this thing will multiply like an earthworm." At the same time, he activated magnetic field nerve and controlled the 78 special metal pieces that he had just put in his sleeves and stuck to his arm. They turned into a silver arc and flew toward the eyes of the human head. Whoosh! The metal pieces scattered at a speed that was difficult to be seen by the naked eye under the enhancement of the magnetic field. Like a meteor shower across the night sky, they instantly hit the eyes and mouth of the human head and passed through the back. Dense, small damage notifications burst out in an instant, and at the same time, the monster's weak points and information were displayed. Human head Ridge LV, 11, HP, 934412000. Description: Hey, look up. Although the monster's HP was terrifyingly high, because of the joint attack just now, it had been reduced by nearly 3,000, which was very impressive. This showed that the boss's help was really strong. But Guan Shan was not happy at all. He widened his eyes, and his heart almost skipped a beat. There's no boss logo in front of the information. How come there's no boss logo? Guan Shan's back was covered in cold sweat. This thing is just an elite monster. Then where's the real boss? He looked around, but found nothing. But in addition to the human skin wall, there were some pools full of pus and rotten liquid. He had tried it before. This liquid would cause a lot of damage in an instant, and even the small monsters would be killed in an instant at the moment when the tower crane collapsed. The worker bees reacted in an instant and gathered the fog that originally covered the entire iron foundry near the tower crane. The fog billowed and lifted the tower crane as if it was solid. At the same time, it swept toward Guan Shan and Gao Yi. When Gao Yi raised her sword, Worker Bee 1 laughed in a low voice. No one knew that although his ability was called dense fog and appeared to be fog, it was actually a group of special, extremely tiny insects. They formed the fog, which was why the fog also had a solid body. And if someone tried to fight it with cold weapons, it would make their vitality more tenacious and give the illusion that they were endless. Over the years, he had used this ability to confuse and kill countless enemies, building his reputation. Today's was also, "Don't cut it with a sword." Guan Shan's shout was suddenly heard. Worker Bee 1's laughter stopped abruptly, and his face turned ugly as he stared at Guan Shan. This person, how could it be? He had never told anyone this secret. How did he find out? PS1. There was a sudden power outage in the afternoon. The update was a bit late. Sorry. The second update will be updated earlier. Weekly raising the Smash Bowl eager. PS2. Thanks to Don't Want to Live and Don't Want to Die. 202-1070. 320-4702-505. Xpsedge. Phone Kong for their tips. Chapter 55. The worker bee felt as if he had seen a ghost. His ability had been kept a secret for nearly 10 years. After countless battles, it wasn't that no one had ever discovered it, but it was usually when the battle was about to end, and everything was a foregone conclusion. After all, from the name to the appearance, this was the real fog. Who would have thought that these were actually tiny insects? Everyone who guessed it was already dead. Rounding it off, it meant that no one knew. However, this Guan Shan actually directly exposed the characteristics of his ability in a face-to-face encounter. He was so sure that it was as if he had known it in advance. But this guy, at the very beginning of the battle, had retreated dozens of meters away with a look of horror. Wasn't this the cannon fodder that Gao Yi brought here with a magnetic control device, but couldn't even aim accurately? As the worker bee stepped up the attack, he couldn't help but guess. Could it be that there are survivors among the enemies I fought before, so they reveal the information? However, no matter what the answer was, it didn't matter. The important thing was that Gao Yi had already understood. So that's how it is. No wonder this fog with a physical body seems to be endless. My best sword skill is cut. If I use all my strength, I'll fall into a trap. Gao Yi dodged the increasingly intensive attacks, and her eyes turned cold. She stomped her feet and retreated into the air. She withdrew her sword and changed her move. This large-scale killing move was the sword skill, Frightening Dragon, which was used to deal with high-agility enemies like the lizard ability users. Boom! As soon as the blade came out, the white dragon roared and collided with the fog in a large area. It was as if a tsunami had been set off in midair, and an instant explosion occurred. The shock wave instantly spread in all directions. A large amount of fog was shredded by this meat grinder, and it couldn't be replenished in a short time. Swoosh! Gao Yi took advantage of this gap and instantly approached the worker bee. As soon as the worker bee was affected by the spreading blade of the frightening dragon, dozens of bloody wounds appeared all over its body. One of its arms was directly cut off. It hurriedly retreated, and it was too late to gather the fog back together. Gao Yi was like a sharp blade with an unstoppable momentum, slashing down from the top to the bottom. Guanshan had been down there the whole time, trying to figure out where the boss was while paying close attention to the battle between the female swordsman and the elite monster. It was impossible to lose. How could a level 15 player lose against a level 11 player? Moreover, Guanshan had already explained the monster's mechanism to the young swordswoman. The last clue, abandon the body, didn't mean that I should do anything. It meant that I shouldn't do anything and let the NPCs do the fighting. The only problem was how to snatch the kill. Guanshan thought about it carefully. If it was an NPC who killed him, it might not be my fault. After all, this simulator is really bad. It's so generous to let out a high-level NPC to help out. There must be a conspiracy, trying to trick him into lowering his evaluation. He had already seen through this simulator. Guanshan narrowed his eyes, raised the flashlight, and stared at the head, making the small red spot between the head's eyebrows appear in his field of vision. He controlled the metal pieces to float in the air, spinning in circles to maintain their high-speed movement. That was right, he didn't use the metal piece of nerve field to play support, but to steal the kill. How high could the damage of the metal piece be? One round was not even as good as the aftermath of an NPC's attack. Therefore, from the beginning, Guanshan didn't think about dealing damage. With someone powerful supporting him, hiding was the right way to go. When he saw the monster's HP plummet to below 2,000 in an instant, the young swordswoman's condensed momentum was about to land the final blow. It's coming. Now. With a thought, Guanshan threw the sharp special metal piece out of its trajectory. Because of the sufficient acceleration, it even produced a sonic boom for a short period of time, breaking away from Guanshan's control. And because of the direction guidance of the system, the metal piece instantly went straight for the weak spot. Whoosh! The young swordswoman's sword slashed the huge head diagonally, and the metal piece controlled by Guanshan instantly pierced through the head's eyebrows. EXP plus 3,100. The notification popped up. Guanshan secretly clenched his fist in excitement. Nice! I got it! Before the worker bee died, what appeared in his vision wasn't a sword, but an inconspicuous metal piece. This matte black metal piece instantly enlarged and accurately hit his eyebrows. The consciousness storage device that the organization gave him to save his life was in it. His expression distorted due to the severe pain, but also with a trace of confusion and shock. This metal piece is Guanshan's? How did he know? Why does he know all my weaknesses so well? How did he suddenly become so accurate? No one could answer the worker bee's question. As his eyes dimmed, it was forever buried in his mind. However, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up in a strange arc. Gao Yi looked at the broken glass container in the worker bee's broken skull with some surprise. The fine droplet-shaped metal frame and the red liquid inside the glass formed a strange structure, replacing the place where the pineal gland was originally located. But now half of it had been broken, and the red liquid was all flowing out. Gao Yi frowned. What is this? But since Guanshan broke this thing, it should also be the worker bee's trump card. She didn't think that Guanshan was stealing the kill at all. Instead, she thought that he must have some deep meaning for doing so. Gao Yi glanced at it and didn't have time to take care of it because the tower crane was no longer supported by the fog. It could no longer be maintained upright and fell down with a creak. She simply jumped over the railing and was about to land on the ground. The wind brushed past her cheeks. Gao Yi looked at the silent iron foundry below. The killer bee people were lying on the ground. Only the hot molten iron flowing out of the blast furnace was still steaming, as if it was the last bit of life. She breathed a sigh of relief in her heart and relaxed a little. Phew, the mission this time has finally been completed perfectly. Guanshan below looked up and saw the swordswoman's figure that seemed to have fallen from the sky. His heart suddenly thumped as he remembered the mission's second-last sentence. You will go to the top of the mountain naked, fall in the wind and rain, cut into pieces, scattered into flesh and blood. This scene, isn't it falling for the top of the mountain? Then wouldn't the next step be to be cut into pieces? Thinking about the boss that hasn't appeared yet, Guanshan suddenly realized with horror that this mission is far from over. Be careful! Guanshan didn't even think about it and shouted first, then directly put immovable prison on the swordswoman's body. Gao Yi was stunned. The next second, all the hot molten iron flowing out of the blast furnace suddenly boiled and poured into the air like a giant whale jumping out of the sea, rushing towards Gao Yi. In one of the blast furnaces below, a human figure made of light and heat stood quietly at the bottom of the pool. Silently, it broke the special shackles on its body and walked out step by step. The high temperature melted everything on the ground and evaporated all the water vapor in the air into a white fog that lingered around its body. On the wall of the molten iron pool, the words Experimental 53 were clearly illuminated by the light on its body. PS1 early, it's indeed a little early. Looking at the sky. Set the bowl as usual, well-behaved. PS2, thank you to Jiaowang1, Night Creatures, Phone Kong, for your tips. Chapter 56. Outside the foundry, the people on standby saw the sudden burst of scorching light in the center. Tang Ji was stunned and quickly asked, "What's that? Are there drones lying in ambush here?" The logistics department member operating the energy detector shook his head, his forehead full of cold sweat. The energy level is only D-class. It's not drones. Tang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. It's just D-class. Then it's fine. Captain can deal with it. Xiaolei looked at the churning molten iron and had a bad feeling. He frowned, turned on his earpiece, and connected to Gao Yi. Yi, what's the situation? The energy level did not represent the strength of the arcana. He could not let his guard down at any time. As soon as the call connected, Gao Yi answered loudly with difficulty. It's dangerous. The enemy can control molten iron. I'm no match. She only had time to shout before she shut her mouth. She took a deep breath, and then there was the sound of a knife. The sound from the earpiece was like the sound of a tidal wave splitting the sea. Xiaolei's heart sank. He took a deep breath and turned to the barrier master codename Screen. Can you handle it? Screen was stunned and said, B-class is fine. Okay. Xiaolei nodded, raised his hand, and opened his palm at the foundry. Gao Yi could not react at all in the air. She only had time to raise her knife before she was drowned by the overwhelming light and heat. The melting point of iron was 1,535 degrees Celsius, and the boiling point was 2,750 degrees Celsius. At this moment, under the intervention of test subject 53, the temperature of the molten iron rose abnormally and reached more than 2,000 degrees Celsius. The waves formed by the molten iron were no different from magma, erupting at full strength. The terrifying heat melted and even vaporized everything around it, including the houses and the ground, and turned them into a part of itself. When they collided with each other, it was not difficult to imagine what would happen to someone if they were in it. Even a B-class strengthening arcana would find it difficult to take it head-on. Not to mention, Gao Yi was not one. In an instant, The molten iron collided with each other and drowned the girl. The sizzling sound was accompanied by a large amount of white smoke rising. The entire foundry seemed to have turned into a scorching hell. If someone stepped in at this time, even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. F***CK. Guan Shan's eyes widened as he stood rooted to the ground, feeling his hands and feet turn cold. In his eyes, the human skin walls around him were like pustules that had been squeezed open, spurting out a large amount of dark green and yellow corrosive liquid. Not only was it stinky and filthy, but it also emitted an abnormally high temperature. Just looking at it could cause tons of psychological damage. He didn't even want to touch it. Is this F***King nuclear wastewater? The tumbling pus blocked all vision, and Guan Shan could only see the shield bar descending rapidly in the air. The buff from immovable prison took effect immediately, which meant that the sword woman now had 10,000 HP. However, this was just a drop in the bucket. The speed at which the shield bar was dropping was simply outrageous. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached the bottom. It could be seen how high the damage of the nuclear wastewater was. Guan Shan dodged the corrosive yellow acid water while checking on the humanoid monster that walked out of the human skin wall. It looked like the corrosive liquid had turned into a spirit. Boss Deadwater, Netherworld, LV, 12, HP, 197-652-0000. Description: Come in. This really is the Yellow Springs in name only. It's dirty and deadly. Guan Shan couldn't help but complain. What's with this description? Is it a provocation? Do you think I don't dare to go in? I really don't dare. Nonsense, who would dare to? Guan Shan was really shocked by the terrifying attributes, and his heart was cold. The difficulty of this boss is too unreasonable. Not to mention its high HP. Why is its attack power so high? The damage caused by this NPC is too low. Red numbers kept jumping above the monster's head, but compared to its 20,000 HP, it was nothing more than a drop in the ocean. At this moment, the shield was completely broken, and the Xitigarbha statue entered cooldown. The NPC's health bar began to drop rapidly. Just as Guan Shan was trembling in fear, the familiar flash of a sword finally appeared. Shing! The clear sound of the sword being drawn resounded throughout the iron foundry, and Takaba split open the circle formed by molten iron and magma. She jumped out and fell directly to the ground from a high altitude, rolled twice, and landed right near Guan Shan. Ha! Ha! Takaba panted violently. Her body was full of burn marks, and it was still steaming. The molten iron behind her immediately rushed over. Guan Shan hesitated for a moment, and then went over to grab the girl's arm, turned around, and ran. Gravity manipulation activated. Eat it! He took out the painkiller and greater healing potion that he plundered and gave them to Takaba. The painkiller was also a healing potion, but its effect was only on par with the flesh entanglement parasite, and it could only slowly restore HP. As for the greater healing potion, it could almost restore HP to full, and for the girl who had 5,000 HP, it was definitely worth it. Guan Shan thought, it's an NPC anyway. It'll be a waste if I don't use it. Takaba was stunned for a moment, and then she realized that this was what Guan Shan plundered from the killer bees before. The situation was urgent, so she immediately ate all the potions and felt her injuries quickly recover, and she was slightly relieved. She looked at Guan Shan's pale face and couldn't help but ask, "Are you that scared?" Scared? Guan Shan didn't hesitate. Since it was an NPC in front of him, he said righteously, "I'm so scared that I'm about to pee my pants. Those monsters, those beasts, and this water, it's so disgusting and cruel. Who wouldn't be scared?" Takaba thought to herself, what are you scared of? Didn't you kill them all? Guan Shan ran in circles with Takaba, and the molten iron chased after them like a flood. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Guan Shan was drenched in cold sweat, and his heart almost jumped out of his chest. He wished he could grow wings and fly away. Gravity manipulation can only last for 5 seconds at a time. At this rate, it'll catch up sooner or later. Guan Shan looked at the severed head in front of him and realized that they had circled around and come back. Although the situation was urgent, he still picked up the dropped items that he didn't pick up before. After rummaging through them, he found a useful item. Broken blood bottle. Effect: increases max HP by 50% for 3 seconds and greatly increases strength, which may cause changes to the body. There is a chance that some of the effects will be retained after the previous effect ends. Description: the blood of a certain existence is stored in a special container. Although it has been broken, it still contains some power. This is it. Guanshan was overjoyed. His mind was still thinking about the hints given by the plot and the description. Burn out, come in, he muttered to himself, and suddenly his eyes widened. F*CK, don't tell me. Gaoyi noticed the wonderful changes in his expression, which were comparable to a color palette. She asked, "Did you find something?" Guanshan didn't give up. He gathered his courage and looked back at the human figure made of pus. He vaguely saw the red mark that indicated the weak point. It was actually at the human figure's heart, and it was faintly discernible. It didn't look like it was on the outside, but it was wrapped inside. His expression changed a few times. Looking at the so-called netherworld that was dirty, stinky, and even vaguely felt like feces, he took a deep breath. It seemed that this was the only way. Damn simulator, you win. Guanshan's expression was painful. He made up his mind and turned his head. Let's split up. You attract its attention. Takaba was stunned. She realized something and asked, "What about you?" Guanshan was already rushing towards the molten iron flood. His back was full of murderous intent. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'll kill its main body." PS1. If you think I'm complaining about something, then you're right. I'm talking about something. There's one more thing that I have to ask of you. If there are any readers who are reading it repeatedly, please help me check if there are any changes. Because it has been directly edited before, if there are any changes, let me know. I'll go back and fix it. PS2. Thank you for the tip. I'm looking for recommendation votes. Chapter 57. Guanshan put all his weapons back into his backpack, reduced his weight, and used gravity manipulation to increase his speed. He looked for a foothold to avoid the tumbling pus. He had already tried on the way to escape. Whether it was incendiary bombs or cold weapons, they were all ineffective. As soon as they came into contact with the high temperature and rancid pus, they would be immediately corroded. The damage caused was almost the same as being bitten by a mosquito. The special metal pieces that matched the neuromagnetic field were 3 less. Fortunately, Guanshan did not try using a high-speed chainsaw. Otherwise, his only melee weapon would be useless. Only by using special skills like the female swordsman could he cause real damage. But the effect was still minimal. In addition, Guanshan thought that the damage was caused by the female swordsman, but in fact, it was Acheron who was losing HP. That's right, it was losing HP by itself. And it was losing more HP than the damage they caused. Waiting for it to lose HP is also a way, but this pus is too corrosive. It can assimilate anything. At this rate, we will have no footholds before it dies. We will be melted directly. It was not that Guanshan did not think of other ways, but in the end, the prompts given by the simulator told him otherwise. The best way was to go into the enemy's hinterland and attack the root of the problem. But isn't this just AF*King fecal butterfly swim? Guanshan looked at the strange bubbles that kept coming out and the yellow pus rushing at his face. The stench was suddenly emitted by the high temperature, and his face turned green. Although nausea is part of the horror game, isn't this a little too disgusting? Is hell a cesspool? While he was thinking, a wave came crashing over. Guanshan jumped to the side, kicked the human skin wall, and used the momentum to flip to a higher level. He swore that he had never been so agile in his life. Sure enough, people are forced. Guanshan relied on gravity manipulation to buff himself. At the same time, he shifted the trajectory of the pus and nimbly moved between the human skin walls that had not been submerged and eroded. He gradually moved closer to the human figure. At the same time, Gaoyi attracted more attention from experimental subject 53. She obeyed Guanshan's instructions and spared no effort to release her sword skills with her ki. causing a lot of damage. Although the damage was not much, it looked like she was the main damage dealer. Boom, boom, boom. Fire and iron intertwined, and torrents of iron and steel attacked Gao Yi like lava snakes. Gao Yi didn't dodge and cut them all. The scattered sword light even almost cut the head of experimental subject 53 in half. Such an arrogant head-on confrontation naturally angered experimental subject 53 greatly. It seemed to have lost some of its intelligence and was acting on instinct. When they felt Gao Ye's killing intent and substantial threat, they took the initiative to list him as their number one enemy and commanded the molten iron to launch round after round of more violent attacks. This was also a huge consumption for Gao Yi, but since Guan Shan decided to kill the main body and do such a dangerous thing, she naturally had to do her best as a cover. He said that he was afraid. It should be true, but even if he was so afraid, he still fought without hesitation. He must have his own reasons. Gao Yi felt that the probability of Guan Shan being the victim of the killer bee increased again, and at the same time, she felt that she understood this person's character better. An image of a timid person with a painful past who had to become cruel for some reason had been born in her mind. I can't hold on much longer. Damn it, why can't I be stronger? If I could cut through all the obstacles with one strike, it wouldn't be so difficult. Gao Ye's face was pale as she gasped for breath. She gritted her teeth and stood with her sword in hand, looking at the iron foundry in front of her. The ground had long been covered by molten iron like lava, and there was no place to stand. And the molten iron melted more and more other substances, and there was more and more of them. At this time, Xiao Lei's voice came from the earpiece. Yi, evacuate the iron foundry in 3 minutes. I'm going to activate my ability. Gao Yi was stunned and quickly said no. Sensei, wait, Guan Shan is about to fight with that psychic at close range. It's too late to evacuate now. Xiao Lei almost thought that he had misheard. He said in surprise, Guan Shan? Close range? You mean, in molten iron at high temperature? The physical strength he's shown so far is at most C-class. How can he survive if he takes on molten iron head-on? If it were someone else, it would be purely courting death. But because the person who made the move was Guan Shan, who appeared to be mysterious from the moment he entered their field of vision, Xiao Lei felt a trace of hesitation, but still said, I'll wait 3 more minutes at most. Gao Yi stared at Guan Shan in the distance. When she saw that the latter had almost broken through the encirclement and was within 53 meters of the experimentals, she took a deep breath and said, We don't need 3 minutes. We should know the result in 1 minute. She put down her sword because the torrent of steel that was attacking her had collectively turned around and rushed back in the direction of the main body. They rushed into the molten iron magma and merged into one, then jumped out from the side of the experimental subject. Experimental 53 finally realized that something was wrong and gathered all its strength to attack Guan Shan fiercely. Guan Shan jumped down from the human skin wall and instantly moved horizontally with the help of gravity manipulation. He dodged 2 streams of stinky pus that smashed down, but the splashing acid still corroded his arms and calves. Dash 342. Guan Shan's heart skipped a beat. F*CK. This damage is 2 F** king high. 1 swipe and 1/3 of my HP is gone. But now, he was only 1 meter away from the humanoid boss. Guan Shan looked at the terrifying human figure made of pus and took a deep breath. He gritted his teeth, reached out his hand, and inserted his fingers into the tumbling liquid chest cavity. Chi-chi. Although there was no pain, the scene of his fingers instantly corroding into white bones and emitting a large amount of white smoke still made Guan Shan's eyelids twitch. Fortunately, he was prepared. He immediately swallowed the greater healing potion that he had been holding in his mouth. His HP instantly jumped back, and his fingers rapidly grew back. Guan Shan took advantage of the situation and moved in a few centimeters further. But the effect of the potion was fleeting, and the skin on his fingers gradually melted again. After the 2 forces were in a stalemate for a while, the stinky acid's corrosive effect ended in victory. At this time, Guan Shan's fingers were only 3 centimeters away from the weak point. He could even feel a burning sensation coming from his fingertips. The yellow and festering face was very close. Although there was no expression, Guanshan could vaguely feel an intense pain from the tumbling liquid. You can feel pain too? Pain is right. Guanshan suddenly felt a sense of danger. He looked up and saw the yellow acid coming at him like a tidal wave. F***CK. Xitigarb's statue's cooldown was over. Immovable prison activated. His HP instantly increased by 50%, and 10 bottles of greater healing potion were filled. Guanshan directly took it head-on. I want to see if I can recover faster, or if you can corrode faster. The moment he was submerged in the acid, his fingers fiercely entered, closed, grabbed, and crushed. PS1. Thanks to you, Meow, Guz and Renolf, Sugar doesn't need friends, and Gspsed for their tips. PS2. Grabbing the readers. Chapter 58. Guanshan only felt that he was holding an abnormally hot and soft object in his hand. The exterior of this thing was wrapped in a membrane-like structure, and it felt like a balloon filled with water. It was extremely tough, but at the same time, it was extremely easy to deform under pressure. When his fingers exerted force, he could clearly feel a strong rhythm coming from it, like a heartbeat. However, this thing was far smoother and more regular than a heart, and the closer it was to the core, the higher the temperature it emitted. The moment Guanshan's fingers were completely closed, the resistance of the rubber-like membrane also reached its maximum, and the rebounding force was stretched to the limit. Even the current Guanshan felt strained. If it were him who did not use the blood bottle, he would definitely be powerless at this moment. However, the blood bottle's substantial strength bonus, coupled with the passive obtained from killing all the small monsters and elite monsters previously, made Guanshan feel that his strength had almost doubled. The humanoid liquid monster was like water in a bottle, struggling to change into various strange shapes on the spot, showing great pain. It reached out its hand to grab Guanshan's arm, desperately trying to stop him. At the same time, the yellow springs all surged over, completely drowning Guanshan. The terrifying heat and damage first poured on the shield formed by immovable prison. However, Guanshan's current HP was only 1,551 even after the increase, and his shield was emptied in the blink of an eye. Then, the one that was destroyed was Guanshan's body. The liquid almost instantly corroded most of his body, but the greater healing potion also took effect at this moment. His flesh and blood grew again, and his muscles and bones were quickly rebuilt, but they were devoured by the liquid in the blink of an eye. Destruction, rebirth, destruction, rebirth. Guanshan's HP jumped back and forth between 0 and 1,551, maintaining a dynamic balance. It was as if he was dancing. Guanshan did not notice that after his body was rebuilt several times, his bones and flesh were mixed with a scorching color, like red-hot steel. Part of the skin on his back had become like cracked, scorched earth, or like the scales of flowing fire. It would no longer be easily corroded by the yellow springs, and even emitted a similar high temperature, which was still expanding. However, this was just a drop in the bucket. The seemingly endless underworld stagnant water was still surging, and the broken blood bottle only lasted for 3 seconds. There was only 1 bottle of greater healing potion left. But 3 seconds is enough. Between the constant destruction and rebirth, Guanshan only had one thought left in his mind, and that was to crush it. When the final second was about to end, the layer of skin finally reached its limit and exploded in Guanshan's hands. At the same time, the struggling human figure also exploded. It paused for a moment and went silent. Then, like an exploding kettle, it instantly expanded and exploded, splattering in all directions. Boom! A terrifying temperature that was high enough to vaporize Guanshan's fingers suddenly erupted from the center, causing the acidic liquid to explode as well. A huge pushing force, together with the liquid, sent Guanshan flying and pushed him to the periphery. Then, from the center, crystallized or spread out and solidified all the liquid at this moment. F***CK. Guanshan hurriedly used the last bottle of potion and fell to the ground from a high place. He held his head and rolled twice. Although he was a little dazed from the fall, he still checked his health bar immediately. Guanshan was stunned. Unexpectedly, his health bar did not decrease at all. It even returned to about 60% because of the potion. He thought about it and then calmed down. Oh, right. Usually, falling from a high place in horror games will not cause any damage. Damn, I worried for nothing. Guanshan saw the experience plus 5,900, prompted his vision, and finally let out a long sigh of relief. He directly lay on the ground and looked at the notifications that began to flood the screen. Final boss killed. Breakthrough mission completed. Level limit unlocked. Health limit unlocked. LV. 10 LV. 12. Current experience. 162-143-0000. Current health bar. 2935. 2935. Simulation ended. This scene will be destroyed. Player, please leave as soon as possible. Countdown. 0:59. F *CK. Stupid simulator. After breaking through level 10, the experience will increase by 10,000 for every level. WDNMD. Guanshan was stunned and directly raised his middle finger to express his love for the simulator. He was still wondering why it gave so much experience before he broke through. Wouldn't he be riding on a rocket when the time came? However, he did not expect that the devil would be 10 times stronger. The damn simulator had already calculated everything. It would not let him off so easily. I'm indeed a human, but you're a real dog. Hello, Yi. What's going on? Wait, the molten iron has been extinguished. Gao Yi was in a daze and turned a deaf ear to the voice from the earpiece. She stared blankly at the iron foundry that had been covered by the cooled molten iron as if it had turned into a postmodern abstract art piece. She fell into a long period of speechless shock. Even if the battlefield had calmed down, there was still a terrifying residual heat. Steam lingered in the air, and the ground around the factory was still in a half-melted state. She felt that her heartbeat had not yet calmed down and was still in a state of nervousness and excitement. This was too shocking. She could not imagine that the man had actually directly inserted his hand into the molten iron that was more than 2,000 degrees Celsius and was then submerged by the spherical dome formed by the molten iron. No matter how she thought about it, he had completely merged with the hot molten iron. No matter how mysterious Gao Yi felt this man was, she was certain that he would definitely die. But a few seconds later, a strong light burst from the center of the dome, followed by an explosion. Gao Yi was ready to face the enemy and even dialed her earpiece again. However, the molten iron quickly cooled down and finally returned to normal. Gao Yi was stunned, because this meant that Guanshan had successfully killed the experimental subject. But even so, he must have been seriously injured. Thinking of this, Gao Yi, who had always been cold, had tears in her eyes. Then Guanshan rolled out from the center of the dome while cursing. His arms and legs were intact, and even his clothes were not torn. Gao Yi held back her tears, leaving only deeper shock and astonishment. Gao Yi said blankly, he succeeded. He directly came into contact with the body of the Arcanist and killed him in the almost boiling molten iron. On the other end of the earpiece, the entire Unit U team was shocked and could not speak for a long time. Xiao Lei was the first to react and said, "Is he injured? Bring him over for treatment first." Gao Yi also came back to her senses, but when she looked at the place where Guanshan was, there was no one there. She looked around blankly. Where is he? Only the molten iron that had cooled and solidified around them was left. Because of the excessive impurities, it was very fragile and gradually weathered after completely cooling down and turned into dust in the night wind. PS1. Thank you to the devil in everyone's heart. Book 20200-823-175-346929. Book 20-171-12122-230-7449 for their tips. PS2. Bolnak Stare. Chapter 59. Guanshan did not stay in the same spot for too long. After all, the countdown to the destruction of the scene was only 1 minute. If he exceeded this time, What if the simulator destroyed him as well? The way out was easy to find. Guanshan patted his butt and stood up. He saw a red torii in the darkness in the distance. It's the same model as before. I'm not afraid of not recognizing it. How considerate. Guanshan took out his nuclear flashlight again. In the previous battle, of course, it was impossible to fight while holding a flashlight. He had to rely on a monster in the so-called Yellow Spring to see clearly. Guanshan did not want to complain. This nuclear wastewater was not only dirty and smelly, but it also had its own fluorescent glow. It was like using essential balm as eye drops. It burned his eyes. Of course, he did not want to think about all this anymore, including the fact that he had been soaked in this water not long ago. Guanshan had to rot in his heart. Otherwise, he would not be able to accept himself like this. The moment Guanshan stepped over the torii, all the darkness around him faded away. Along with the crystals that turned into ashes, they disappeared into nothingness. In front of him was the living room that was illuminated by the faint light of dawn. All the furniture was so familiar, and the floor under his feet was solid. The window next to the sofa was not closed tightly. The wind that blew in through the screen had a hint of the coolness of dawn. Guanshan had goosebumps, but he felt that it was especially real and comfortable. He turned around. Naturally, there was no such thing as a torii. Phew! Guanshan let out a long sigh. He was so moved that he almost burst into tears. It feels so good to be home after returning from hell. He jumped directly onto the sofa, but because he pulled on his wound, he stopped halfway and hissed in cold air. Guanshan looked at the hideous wounds on his arm and body. Only then did he feel the burning pain all over his body. He angrily changed into a more comfortable position and tied the medical talisman back on. He even took a painkiller and waited for the wound to heal on its own. Although the healing effect of the painkiller was relatively weak, after leaving the simulation, the additional effect of the painkiller was particularly useful. At this moment, the countdown had reached its end. The interface for calculating the rewards instantly opened. It's time for the part I'm looking forward to the most. I fought so hard this time, so you have to give me something good, right? Guanshan sat up and sat cross-legged on the sofa. He narrowed his eyes and looked all the way down. Game simulation ended. Inferno Frontier. Final boss killed. 1-1. Rating. Elite monsters killed. 33. Rating. Normal monster kills. 4,141. Rating. Acquired items. Medical Talisman X1. Painkiller X28. Electromagnetic Pulse Disruptor X3. Special Metal Piece X77. Xidagarba Statue. 7th. X1. Furnace Core X1. Underworld 100 Forged Steel X1. Rating. Perfect, able to keep all acquired items. Acquired rewards. Game coins X 13,500. Skill points X3. Unlocked achievement. Burial Mound. Dancing. Health points reduced to 1/10. Achievement reward. A heart. JPG. All rewards have been sent to the backpack. Please check. New items in the shop have been unlocked. Calculation complete. Please wait patiently for the next simulation to start. This achievement name is getting more and more ridiculous. Even the name Burial Mound Disco is out. My HP bar changed to an audio bar because of this stupid simulator. Guanshan was bitter. Was he willing to go to the disco? If it wasn't for the high difficulty of each simulation and the monsters chasing after him, would he be in such a miserable state? And the reward is only a heart. Guanshan said fiercely, I'm warning you, little model, if you dare to fool me, I'll have to continue looking at other rewards. Although it was scared, the simulator did not disappoint Guanshan. After using the heart, it immediately increased his health points by 500. The health points that had been ravaged by all kinds of things finally welcomed spring. It went from 2,935 to 3,435 after the upgrade, making up for all the lost health points in one fell swoop. Looking at it made him feel much safer. Guanshan was pleasantly surprised. He looked up again and muttered, the furnace core and the underworld 100 forged steel should be the items dropped by the boss. Moreover, the two were set. Furnace core. Effect. After the materials are put in, The remaining craftsman's soul will use them to forge a suitable weapon. The time taken will be determined by the materials. Description: although the furnace core is broken, the steel soul has not died. Guan Shan touched his chin. So, it's a furnace? But it looks like it can only produce cold weapons. It's a good item, but it can't be used directly in the backpack. I have to find a place to put it outside for it to work. Guan Shan muttered. Moreover, the backpack will be full after the simulation ends. There should be more slots in the shop, but it will become more and more urgent. I have to find a hidden place to use as a warehouse. Renting a warehouse in the suburbs or a house with a basement should be fine. It just so happened that the 130,000 from before could be put to use. The other item was obviously the dropped material. Underworld 100 forged steel. Effect: after putting it in a forging vessel, there is a chance that it will become a suitable weapon. Description: a strange metal that was born from the flesh and blood of the ghosts in hell. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the painful wails of the people who fell into the underworld. What kind of vessel? Just say it's the furnace core and be done with it. Guan Shan was speechless. Are there other furnaces here that can be used? He shook his head. Forget it. Anyway, if we combine these two things, we could get a new close combat weapon. Guan Shan was full of expectations. Since it's dropped by a boss, it should be of good quality. His current weapons could no longer keep up with the damage of the monsters, so he could only rely on his own hands to tear them apart. He hoped that this new weapon would be able to make him a better person. As for the rest, there was nothing much to say. Guan Shan was just about to check the shop that had reopened for purchase when he suddenly heard footsteps coming from upstairs. He turned his head and saw Shun Dinghua yawning as she walked down the stairs with a confused expression. Shun Dinghua saw Guan Shan sitting on the sofa and immediately ran over on tiptoe. She sat beside Guan Shan and said faintly, Xiao Shan, why are you awake so early? Guan Shan saw that her subtext was, I didn't have time to do anything. He laughed dryly and made an excuse with a serious face. Continue to work today. I have almost sorted out some of the recent fire news. I have to go back to the newspaper office to report the progress to the president. Shin Dinghua puffed up her cheeks, but work definitely couldn't be delayed. She had to stand up and say, Then I'll go make breakfast for Xiao Shan. Try my cooking. Guan Shan smiled and nodded. Suddenly, he found that Shun Dinghua's clothes had been changed. She was wearing a spaghetti-strap nightgown. It was the one he saw in the illusion. PS1. Thank you to Pure Nerd Book Boy, Ruan, Technology O Look, Zhang Kong, Tsunsuna for your tips. PS2. Throw a reader in and you can get. Hey, Chapter 60. Guan Shan looked at Shun Dinghua's nightgown suspiciously. Before he could say anything, Shun Dinghua noticed his gaze. She blinked, propped her chin on her hand, and pretended to be curious. Xiao Shan, why are you looking at me like that? This nightgown was not the one Shun Dinghua was wearing before he left, which meant that Shun Dinghua must have changed it in the middle of her sleep. This was not unusual, but why was it the same as the one he saw in the illusion? Moreover, he had never seen Shun Dinghua wearing this nightgown before. Guan Shan hesitated for a moment, pointed at the nightgown she was wearing, and said, I remember that you were not wearing this when you went to bed. Shun Dinghua's smile suddenly collapsed. She purposely propped her chin on her hand to show the curves of her body, but it did not work. She muttered disappointedly, The air conditioner was turned off in the middle of my sleep. I was sweating all over, so I took a shower and changed into a cooler nightgown. Shun Dinghua stood up, lifted the hem of the nightgown, and spun around. Isn't it beautiful? I remember that you used to say that I looked very good in this nightgown. Guan Shan was stunned. So that's how it was. He shook his head and did not know whether to laugh or cry at his own suspicions. In the illusion, Shun Dinghua was shot directly in the heart. She definitely could not have survived. How could it be real? He had probably seen this nightgown and forgotten it, but he could still remember it subconsciously. Looking at Shun Dinghua's sparkling eyes, Guan Shan quickly nodded and said, It's beautiful, but it's mainly because little comrade Shun is beautiful, so you look good in anything. Shun Dinghua snorted. Smooth talker. Guan Shan raised his hand and said seriously, I swear, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Shindinghua pounced on Guanshan and pinched his face. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws and said fiercely, "You're too skilled. It must be a lie." Guanshan immediately hugged the girl to prevent her from falling and said in a low voice, "That's only a lie for you. Isn't that still a lie, you liar?" Although she said that, Shindinghua blushed and loosened her grip on Guanshan's face. She changed her action of pinching Guanshan's face to holding his cheeks. Then, she straightened up and moved forward. Her thumb stroked Guanshan's eye socket, and her index finger was placed on Guanshan's temple, pressing gently. Shindinghua whispered, "Close your eyes. It's still early. I'll give you a massage to relax. Staying up all night is very tiring." Guanshan immediately closed his eyes. He could still see the snowy white in front of him. In this position, Shindinghua was almost kneeling on him. In terms of height, he didn't need to lower his head to clearly see the scenery of the thin nightgown collar. He could see it more clearly than in the illusion. In addition, the touch of the soft thighs and the warm and smooth waistline under the nightgown that was rubbed on Guanshan's fingers. No matter what, it was enough to make him restless. What kind of relaxation is this? I can't relax at all. Guanshan's body was tense, and he wailed in his heart. Shindinghua seemed to have noticed this and said, "Xiaoshan, don't be so nervous. I'm not a man-eating tiger." If Guanshan said you weren't a tiger, then who was? The women at the foot of the mountain were indeed tigers. Shindinghua turned and pressed Guanshan's shoulder. She leaned her head close to Guanshan's ear and said with a smile, "Although Xiaoshan lied again, I'll forgive you this time, because I lied to Xiaoshan first." Guanshan was puzzled. Shindinghua's hot breath tickled his ear. She said, "The air conditioner wasn't turned off, and I didn't sweat. But the nightgown was a little wet, so I had to change it." Guanshan opened his eyes and was even more puzzled. Why? Shindinghua didn't answer his question. Xiaoshan's quilt has Xiaoshan's smell. It smells good. The smell of shower gel? Guanshan was stunned for a moment, and then he reacted. He suddenly turned to look at Shindinghua in astonishment, but suddenly felt his ear being gently bitten. Shindinghua jumped down from the sofa and said with a smile, "Xiaoshan is so stupid." Guanshan reached out and touched his ear. He felt that it was burning. It must have turned red. It was just a light bite. Of course, it couldn't have bitten him like that. I'll go take a shower first. Guanshan ran upstairs in embarrassment, rushed directly into the bathroom, and closed the door. The sound of water splashing could be heard. Guanshan let out a long breath and touched his ear. It seemed that there was still a trace of moisture left. She must have taken the opportunity to lick it. Guanshan was very sure of this. This kind of childish behavior was like secretly tasting a cake, but it brought a trace of numbness to his heart. Guanshan sighed. He couldn't tell which was scarier, horror games or comradeship. Anyway, when facing these two things, his heart was beating faster. Guanshan hid in the bathroom and simply continued his work. He checked the shop. The originally empty shop had a lot of new items on the shelves. After this breakthrough mission, his game coins had reached 23709. It could be said that his wallet was bulging and he was full of confidence. At this moment, his heart was filled with the desire to spend. Guanshan browsed one by one. The first is the Sage Pocket Watch accessory. It's quite suitable for the occasion. After he checked the details, he suddenly opened his eyes wide. It can reduce the cooldown of skills. Sage Pocket Watch. Effect. Choose a skill that is on cooldown and directly skip the cooldown time so that it can be used again. After use, the cooldown time of the skill will be doubled. Description. With a tremor, everything in front of you suddenly becomes dull. Guanshan was energized. If you want to talk about this, then I'm not sleepy anymore. Although only magic pattern drawing was on cooldown, it was already uncomfortable enough. In the future, if he got a godly skill with a long cooldown time, this thing would be very useful. Guanshan glanced at the price and suddenly felt like cold water had been poured on his head. The corner of his mouth twitched. 5,000? That's so greedy. It's the same as the reward I got from a dungeon. Let's look at the price of the other things first. He continued to flip to the back. The remaining items were the skill book, Soul Searing Whistle, which was worth 3,000 game coins. The items were Beast Trap *1, which was worth 2,400 game coins, Teddy Bear *1, which was worth 12,000 game coins, and Lucky Clay Pot *10, which was worth 1,000 game coins. There was also a piece of equipment, Mask of Pain *1, which was worth 6,200 game coins. The remaining items were the Equipment Expansion Slots *1, which was worth an exaggerated 20,000 game coins, and his old friend, Backpack Expansion Slots *5, which was worth 10,000 game coins. Guanshan's mouth twitched. I remember that at the beginning, one slot was only worth 1,000 game coins. Now, one slot is worth 2,000 game coins, and you're selling all 5 of them. You're really something simulator. He had finally figured out how to do business. PS1. Thank you to Fenghua Guardian, Weiqing City's Morning Rain, Qingshun, Ending Yao, Jiawei, CR for their rewards. Thank you very much for your support. PS2. Knock on the bowl, asking for votes. Now, the double monthly vote campaign. It's the last day of the month. If you haven't voted yet, please vote for me. Chapter 61. Guanshan leaned against the wall of the bathroom and looked at the shop interface, contemplating how to spend the money. Let me think about it. The skills can be put aside first. My 4 skill slots are full now, and although Soul Burning Whistle is against ghost-type abilities and has a dispelling effect, I still have the Strange Mark from the Beginner Survival Combo Pack that has a similar effect. In fact, it is a duplicate. Guanshan nodded. And if I don't learn it, it will take up space in the backpack, so I can put it aside for the time being. When the time limit of Nerve Magnetic Field is over, I will use it to fill the space. The skill book priced at 3,000 was the first to be eliminated. Then there are a few items. The most useless and ridiculous one should be this Teddy Bear. Guanshan checked its details. Teddy Bear. Effect. It feels fluffy and soft. It will probably be very fragrant if you hug it to sleep. Description. In addition to being particularly cute, this is really just an ordinary teddy bear. Guanshan was speechless. It was as if this was a joke. Although based on his previous experience, he could probably guess that this item was definitely not as simple as it looked. But 12,000 was 12,000 game coins. Wouldn't it be better to spend 10,000 to buy Backpack Expansion Slots *5? Guanshan did spend it. He didn't hesitate at all and bought the backpack slots first, directly expanding it to 16 slots. Well, now I can't afford the equipment slots. Guanshan calculated that the remaining 3 items added up to 9,600. If he bought all of them, he would only have 4,109 left and wouldn't be able to buy this Sage Pocket Watch. Although they are all very useful, this jar has a certain randomness. It is better to buy the necessary items first. Beast Trap, Pain Mask, and Sage Pocket Watch totaled 13,600. Guanshan only had 109 game coins left in his hands. But looking at the effects of these items, his heart didn't hurt too much. Beast Trap effect automatically conceals after activation and becomes invisible. Has the same HP as the player. Deals damage of 30% of the target's maximum HP after activation. Disappears after 10 seconds when the HP bar reaches 0. Description: a large bear trap used to catch deer. However, if a person is caught in it, he will also die. Guanshan felt that his money was well spent. High damage and crowd control. It's a pity that it's a single-use item. As for the other accessory, Mask of Pain, its effect was that if the wearer received damage after wearing it, the damage dealt to the target would increase by 2% for every second up to a maximum of 10%. It could last for 200 seconds after being stacked to the maximum. After that, it would enter a 3-day cooldown. This skill, coupled with the thorns and mage withdrawing that had killed the mutated zombies, could be said to be very invincible. Therefore, the first thing Guanshan did after buying the Sage Pocket Watch was to remove the cooldown of mage withdrawing. Guanshan touched his chin. Right, there are 3 skill points left. I'll add them to Carrion Accumulation, Gravity Control, and Mage Withdrawing. Carrion Accumulation, S level 3 effect increased his HP by 20% and became 3607. Gravity Control, S range increased to 100 meters and its duration increased to 20 seconds. The weight did not change. Mage withdrawing. Various buffs also increased to a certain extent, and its duration increased to 70 seconds. With this, Guanshan had basically finished distributing all the rewards. Shen Dinghua's voice came from downstairs, calling for him to eat. Guanshan responded and came out of the shower to put on his clothes. However, he saw in the mirror that there was a large crack on his back. Guanshan was shocked. He squinted his eyes to take a closer look and reached out to touch it. Only then did he realize that it seemed to be hard skin that was growing. It was shaped like scales, but it was not layered. Instead, it was divided by irregular dark red lines. From the back of the neck, it extended to the shoulder area. At the place where the thorns were, the dark red lines intersected. It was a circular pattern that was about 5 centimeters long. What is this thing? Guanshan frowned. He did not feel anything when he touched it with his hand. It was neither painful nor itchy. It was no different from normal skin. Otherwise, he would not have noticed it when he took a shower. Guanshan thought for a long time and finally remembered that among the effects of the broken blood bottle, there may cause a mutation in the body that would remain. I see. But what kind of mutation is this? I haven't learned how to use my fingers to release spider silk. Guanshan felt that he might have become a fake mutant. The only changes were that his strength had increased slightly, and there was an additional tattoo on his back. However, he felt that this skin had not completely awakened yet. Perhaps there would be other changes after a while. Guanshan put on his clothes, especially a jacket, and went downstairs to eat the breakfast that Shen Dinghua had made. Although it was just simple noodles, he was naturally full of praise. After breakfast, on the way to the news agency, Guanshan sent a message to Li Jing. President, how was the response to the news the night before yesterday? He was asking for credit when he already knew the answer. Guanshan had already looked around on VB and various new media channels. The discussion about the few juvenile criminals was still very popular. The official account of the Hangzhou Evening News had already gained 30,000 fans. It had successfully entered the public's view. Because the follow-up police found more evidence of Tian Bin and the others' crimes based on the clues provided, it proved that they were indeed the real culprits. It also exposed that they had done more scumbags. However, at the same time, it also exposed that some third-rate media outlets had accepted bribes and were threatened to not pursue the matter. Under such circumstances, the nameless reporter, who was brave enough to expose and act bravely for a just cause, was praised. Unfortunately, the video at that time did not have the face of the brave reporter who did not want to reveal his name. Otherwise, he would have gained a group of fans. Li Jing quickly replied. The response was very good. You did a good job. It was right to give you these tasks. As for the remaining 2, I am looking forward to your performance. But even if you can't find them, what you have now is enough. The news department doesn't have a deputy director yet. You have a good relationship with Peng Fei. Are you interested? Guanshan paused and then replied. No. Thank you for your kindness. However, I still prefer to be a reporter outside. An administrative position is not suitable for me. Wasn't it true? If he stayed in the office in this situation, he would have to fight with the air in public every few days. Not only was it not suitable, but it was also fatal. Li Jing did not insist. After a while, she replied, Come directly to my office later. A few police officers are looking for you. They said they want you to do them a favor. PS1. Thank you 20201191730193353 for your tip. PS2. Set up a pot and ask for votes. Asterisk greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 62. Li Jing put down her phone and looked up at the people in front of her. She smiled and said, Guanshan is already on his way here. We may have to wait for another 10 minutes. If you don't mind, why don't you have a cup of tea first? The middle-aged man sitting on the sofa opposite them was Xia Lei, who had changed into a police uniform. He looked quite elegant and upright, and after changing into the police uniform, he looked even more fierce and stern. He sat there, looking more like a real police officer than a real one. Of course, it wasn't fake. Xia Lei was the instructor of the Special Formation of Paranormals, and he had made outstanding military achievements. Although it wasn't known to outsiders, he had a real military rank. It was just that the information on the ID that was usually used to deal with ordinary people had nothing to do with him. It was an official forgery. Outsiders knew that the Tayan formation was just a relatively special law enforcement agency. This time, Xiaolei came with a few logistics brigades. They were called logistics, but in fact, they were the real soldiers of the special forces. However, on the real battlefield of paranormals, they could only be reduced to logistics. As for the three-man team, because Gao Yi was injured, they temporarily took a break. Xiaolei shook his head and smiled. President Li, you don't have to bother. We'll just wait for a while. Compared to drinking tea, I'd like to know what kind of person Guanshan is in your opinion. Li Jing looked at him and said, although the Hangzhou Evening News is just a second-rate newspaper, there are still many interns and even more formal employees. 5 days ago, my impression of Guanshan was only that he knew his place and had a serious attitude. It was normal for every intern's manuscript to be rejected 4 or 5 times. Basically, the quality was similar. It was the editor's job to check. In this case, Li Jing naturally wouldn't pay special attention to one of them. It was good enough to leave an impression. She continued to say helplessly, however, since he quarreled with the deputy managing editor 5 days ago, I feel that I've let him down. He's very capable, but not in terms of writing. Of course, it's not that his writing isn't good. I've personally read his manuscripts over the past few days, and they're all very good. It's just that he's too good at solving cases. Originally, he just wanted him to find more clues to get some information out of him. Who would have thought that this guy would directly solve this unsolved case? Li Jing asked tentatively. If I may be so bold as to ask, you are not planning to recruit him to investigate some case, right? Xiaolei stared blankly for a moment, then laughed and said, we did want him to help us, but we didn't expect him to guess it. I hope President Li doesn't mind. Li Jing shook her head. Why would I care? It all depends on what Guanshan thinks. Xiaolei smiled and said, I already communicated with him a few days ago. There shouldn't be any problems on his side. He seemed to be casually looking for a topic to talk about, and then said, by the way, I heard that he has a good relationship with a girlfriend who also works at the newspaper. Yes, this was the other purpose of Xia Lei's visit today. In addition to visiting Guanshan, he wanted to take a step further to understand Shindinghua from the people around him. Of course, Xiaolei also considered the issue of safety. However, from her attitude towards Guanshan, at least if Guanshan was there, she wouldn't do anything big. After discovering that Shun Dinghua's bone structure was abnormal before and after high school, Xiaolei tried to continue investigating, but he didn't find any other clues. The cause of death of Guanshan's parents was clearly recorded. His father died in a factory accident, and his mother died in a traffic accident on the same day. After that, Guanshan took half a year off from school. This was also very understandable. It was almost impossible for a high school student not to collapse after suffering such a heavy blow in one day. After taking half a year off from school, Guanshan could still continue to study and take the college entrance exam. He even did well in the exam. He could already be regarded as a strong and inspirational person. Shindinghua's family background was even more clean. Her parents were executives of a famous company in China, and they were very rich. The small villa they lived in now was specially bought in a remote place for the sake of peace and quiet. Xiaolei even thought of the hypothesis that Shun Dinghua's parents didn't exist, but then he denied it. This couple was often on the news in China, and their relationship network was very complicated. There were traces to follow, and it was impossible for them to be fake. Although Xiaolei's parents went abroad on a business trip a few days ago, he still tried to send someone to investigate, and the result was the same. Under the guise of understanding China's education system, Shun Dinghua's parents were very willing to share their child's growth trajectory. However, in the eyes of her parents, Shun Dinghua had always been a well-behaved and sensible child. That detailed and even excessively excellent resume was not suspicious at all. No matter how they investigated, it was impeccable in all aspects. The only suspicious incident was that 3 months after the death of Guanshan's parents, another worker went missing in the factory where Guanshan's father worked. Until now, their bones had not been found. But this incident happened too long ago, and now that the factory had closed down, the files left behind were useless. If they wanted to investigate, they would have to put in more effort. If the colleagues and superiors are also useless, I can at least meet Shindinghua in person today. The only time we met before should be the night when Guanshan was admitted to the hospital. We brushed past each other in the corridor. I have to say that her disguise was very good. Even at that time, I just thought she was a young girl who was worried about her boyfriend. But on the other hand, it can also prove that she cared a lot about Guanshan. This is a very good breakthrough point and an opportunity to talk. That was what Xiaolei thought. He had already thought about how to get Shun Dinghua to stay later and then tentatively communicate with her. The rest would be left to the psychologist who was already secretly observing. The best result now is that Shun Dinghua's bone structure changed because of the awakening of her supernatural ability. Secondly, she was replaced by a supernatural ability user in high school. In the worst case, a psychologist who used the mind and soul as power could not only judge the good and bad of a person's personality, but also determine whether the other party was human or not. However, to Xia Lei's surprise, Li Jing was stunned when she heard this. What girlfriend? Xia Lei was stunned, then smiled apologetically and said, I forgot that Guanshan and Shen Dinghua haven't made their relationship public yet. It should be said that they have a very good relationship with a girl. He couldn't help but sigh and shook his head. Sigh, I really don't know what young people are thinking. They're already living together, but they're still trying to cover it up. If it were us at that time, we would have already had children. Li Jiying was even more confused and frowned. No, I mean in our newspaper, there's no one called Shen Dinghua. Xiao Lei's expression froze. His pupils contracted, and he instantly realized that something was wrong. At this time, someone knocked on the office door. Hello, President. Guanshan's voice was heard. He pushed the door open and entered, followed by a petite figure. The girl behind Guanshan tilted her head and looked at Xia Lei, who was sitting on the sofa, showing a very polite smile. PS1. Thank you, Old Lei, and Han Xian Yu for your tips. PS2. Stretch your claws and grab the tickets. Grab the tickets and run quickly. Hey! Chapter 63. Guanshan walked into the office and saw Li Jing and another group of people sitting on the sofa in the reception area. He recognized at a glance that the middle-aged man in the lead was Xia Lei. Guanshan's mouth twitched. Sure enough, it's that strange police officer from last time. I had some doubts before, but I didn't expect him to really come to the newspaper. Guanshan sized up Xia Lei and the few dark-skinned and resolute policemen behind him. The atmosphere was not as easygoing as last time. They even brought their relatives and children. If the setting were any other, it would be a joint trial. He took out a table lamp, turned it to the brightest, and then shone the light directly into his face. Guanshan muttered to himself, This Xia Lei's rank is quite high. Last time when he asked for my help, he was so humble. It seems that he really thought that the bus incident was a supernatural incident. Otherwise, how could he find a small reporter like me? He thought, it seems that he has been chatting with the president for a while, but why does his expression feel a little stiff? Could it be that the president did not agree to lend him out? That couldn't be right. Although Guanshan did have a mission now, when they contacted the president before, she directly said that they had something to ask him. Why was she suddenly unwilling? Guanshan wanted to ease the atmosphere, so he walked to Li Jing and said, President, I have sorted out the general content of the fire protection topic. Can I show it to you later? Okay. Li Jing came back to her senses. She only thought that Xia Lei had made a mistake just now. She knew that she should immediately change the topic to avoid embarrassing him. She nodded to Guanshan and said, We'll talk about the topic later. You talk to Officer Xia first. There's something at the editor-in-chief's office. I'll lend you the office. I'll leave first. The police specifically asked Guanshan for help. She knew that it was not convenient for her to be there, so she might as well leave first. Something at the editor-in-chief's office? As a daily newspaper, of course there was something every day. Thus, Li Jing stood up from the sofa and nodded to Xia Lei, who still had a strange expression on his face. She then prepared to leave. Xia Lei watched her walk past Guanshan and Shen Dinghua. Then, As if he didn't see the smiling girl, he walked out of the door. Xiaolei took a deep breath and suddenly called out to Li Jing, "President Li, there's something else I want to ask you." Li Jing was stunned. She stopped and turned back to look at Xiaolei. She smiled and said, "Please tell me. As long as I know, I will tell you." Xiaolei looked into Shun Dinghua's clear eyes and said word by word, "Since Shun Dinghua is not an employee of your newspaper, why don't you ask Guanshan why he brought an unrelated person here?" At this moment, Xiaolei's eyes were cold. He changed his strategy and planned to face her directly. If Shun Dinghua had never joined this newspaper, she might not have existed. However, those who knew of her existence could tell everything about her in detail. To be able to influence people's consciousness on such a large scale and without restraint, it must have involved countless people over the years. Compared to this, Fang Minmin's desire virus was just a child's play. He could not allow such a bomb to exist on the land of Huaxia. Even if he had to make some sacrifices, he had to nip this bud in the bud. Xiaolei knew clearly that if he exposed Shun Dinghua in front of Guanshan, he would definitely anger the other party. As long as the other party showed a trace of killing intent, he would immediately make a move. At the same time, he informed the barrier ability user, Serene, who had been on standby through the earpiece, "Open the barrier on the 8th floor of the building, the highest level. I will try to concentrate my power." After hearing his question, Li Jing was a little surprised. Then, she walked to Shun Dinghua's position. Then, she still brushed past Shun Dinghua. She squatted down next to the cabinet in the corner, opened a drawer, and murmured, "Officer, you also like tea. My tea is not expensive. It's just the ordinary Yuqian Longjing tea. If you like it, I can give you a can." She thought in her heart, Officer Xia didn't drink it just now, but now she took the initiative to ask for it. This Officer Xia was really fickle. Xiaolei looked at the green box of tea leaves in astonishment. He suddenly turned to look at Guanshan. Guanshan's expression was also full of surprise. Seeing Xiaolei look over, he coughed twice, as if he didn't see this scene, and said, "Officer Xia, long time no see. Haha, I didn't know you had a hobby of drinking tea." He had never seen such a blatant bribe scene, and was a little afraid of being silenced. Guanshan said, "No wonder this person has a few relatives and children who dance in bars in the middle of the night. You really can't judge a book by its cover." He quickly changed the topic and said, "Speaking of which, when I went to investigate last time, I met your relative, Gao Yi. She almost had an accident. This is too dangerous. Don't you want to take care of that child?" Curiosity killed the cat. Although I can understand the feelings of a child who wants to find the truth and punish evil, I can't let a child who hasn't fully matured into a den of evil, right? Guanshan only asked a few questions, and his house was almost invaded. If a delicate little girl like Gao Yi fell into their hands, it would be unimaginable. At this time, he could hear Guanshan's words of concern for Gao Yi. Thinking of the experimental subject that suddenly appeared last night, if Guanshan wasn't there, Gao Yi might have been in danger. It was obvious that his concern came from the bottom of his heart. Xiaolei's mood was complicated, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But before Xiaolei could finish his thoughts, he heard Serene reply in a strange tone from his earpiece. "Later, we're going to eat spicy hot pot? And insanely spicy? Old Xia, I remember that you can't eat spicy food, right? Last time, when we had hot pot, you went to the toilet for 3 days straight. Have you forgotten?" Another one. His words were all twisted. Xiaolei's face darkened. He suddenly turned his head to look at the soldiers from the logistics department and shouted, "Immediately shoot Shun Dinghua." The few brawny men were dumbfounded, but they still said yes. They walked over and helped Li Jing take a few more cans with a trace of embarrassment on their faces. The corners of Li Jing's mouth twitched subtly, but she still put on a professional smile and said, "If you really like it, I'll mail you a few more cans. Why bother the police officers?" Shun Dinghua looked at Xiaolei, and the smile on her face seemed to deepen. Xiaolei was speechless. Everyone's thoughts were changed in an instant. How strong was her ability? No, wait. Xiaolei was stunned. He suddenly realized that it wasn't these people's thoughts that were changed. It was the words that came out of his mouth. They weren't what he thought in his mind, and what his mind wanted to convey wasn't what he really wanted to say, because at the same time, the words that came out of his mouth were changed, and the words that he conveyed through his special earpiece were also changed. In other words, the person who was changed was himself. Xiaolei immediately broke out in a cold sweat. PS1. Thank you to Fingkong, book friend 20-170-8260-85-802-239 for your tips. PS2. A non-voting reader passed by, and Comrade Shin immediately changed the reader's thoughts, asking him to volunteer to vote. Asterisk caret o caret. Person caret o caret asterisk. Chapter 64. Xiaolei was drenched in cold sweat, and his heart sank. Since Shun Dinghua can quietly change what I want to say, she can naturally change my actions. After he thought of this, he dismissed the idea of making a move now. With the screen maintaining the enchantment, if he could eliminate such an extremely dangerous paranormal, it wouldn't matter even if he had to risk the recurrence of his old injuries, or even if he was killed because he angered the other party. But without the enchantment or other measures, he would implicate everyone in the building. He couldn't afford to pay such a price. When his consciousness was controlled, Xiaolei was already isolated from the world. In the case of one-sided information flow being blocked, Xiaolei couldn't even pass on his own warning to others that Shun Dinghua is a dangerous paranormal. Not to mention that he might not be able to kill himself the moment he thought of making a move. Even if he could, most people would mistake him for killing innocent people. There was no way to break out of this situation. Xiaolei took a deep breath, thinking that at least the extent of his words being distorted was limited. At least he was going to eat Malatang instead of Wallace. This showed that Shan Dinghua still had some considerations. But even so, Xiaolei already felt that the reputation he had accumulated in the first half of his life was in danger, and he was about to slide into the abyss of forcibly asking for bribes. Xiaolei looked at Shun Dinghua's unchanged smile and sighed in his heart. He knew that he couldn't do anything to Shun Dinghua today. In the future, he didn't know if there would be a chance. He had been silent for a while thinking. Seeing that Li Jing's expression had a trace of imperceptible sarcasm and anger, he quickly waved his hand and said, "I'm just kidding, President Li. Don't take it seriously. I want to ask if I can buy some from you." He asked the men from the logistics department to put down the tea cans and awkwardly said, "To be honest, I'm only here on a business trip and I'm pressed for time. I'll be returning to the headquarters soon, and I don't have time to shop. But I've been longing for Hangzhou's Longjing tea for a long time, and it just so happens that President Li has some." Xiaolei's words were sincere, and his expression was serious. Coupled with his temperament, he was very convincing. Only then did Li Jing's face turn for the better. Although she was still puzzled by Officer Xia's sudden harsh tone, as if she was about to rob them, she was still confused about her behavior of asking for tea leaves. But since the other party had said so, she had to give him a way out. Li Jing said in a gentle tone, "There's no need to buy it. It's just tea leaves. It's good to keep it as a souvenir." Xiaolei secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Sure enough, as long as what he said had nothing to do with Shin Dinghua, it would not change. He shook his head and asked the logistics staff to put the tea leaves back. He chuckled and said, "If that's the case, how can I take it for free? I can see that you like these tea leaves very much, so I won't take it from you." Li Jing was confused. She inexplicably asked for the tea leaves forcefully, then turned around and said she didn't want it. If she didn't understand, she would ask. Did Officer Xia have a split personality? Even though she had met many different kinds of people in the news media industry, she had never seen such a polarized attitude. But since the other party said she didn't want it, and the tea leaves were stuffed back, Li Jing couldn't force it. Before leaving, she asked again worriedly, "Do you have anything else?" No. Xiaolei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "We'll leave after a while." As usual, Li Jing acted as if she didn't see Shin Dinghua. When she walked out of the door, she didn't forget to considerately close the door. Now, there were only the people from the Taiyan formation, Guanshan, and Shun Dinghua left in the office. Xiaolei looked at Guanshan and adjusted his mentality. He stretched out his hand and made a gesture of invitation. With a smile on his face, he said in a warm voice, "Please sit down." His attitude was unbelievably good, and he didn't avoid Comrade Shun. It didn't seem to be a secret. Guanshan had previously guessed that the Tan Formation was a confidential organization that specialized in dealing with supernatural incidents. Now it seemed that there weren't many taboos. Guanshan raised his eyebrows and sat down with Shen Dinghua. He said, "Just tell me directly. What do you want me to help with? Let me say this first. I'm just an ordinary reporter. If you want me to solve a big case, then you've found the wrong person." The corner of Xia Lei's mouth twitched. An ordinary reporter who walked through 2,000 degrees of molten iron and scathed and tore apart psychic? Those who died in your hands would come back to life and ask, "Are you polite?" But what was worse was that after Guanshan finished speaking, Shen Dinghua's head nodded vigorously like a chick pecking at rice. She pretended to be serious and said nervously, "Yes, yes. Xiaoshan is just a reporter. He saw the case last time by chance. And at that time, those people were holding knives in their hands. It was very dangerous." Shen Dinghua was very worried. If he helps the police again, what if Xiaoshan is targeted by the criminals and gets hurt? How could it be more dangerous than the two of you? Even if the police didn't know where the rest of the teenagers who had been exposed by Tian Bin had gone, how could Guanshan not know? Considering the possibility that Guanshan thought that Shen Dinghua was an ordinary person and chose to hide and resist from the Tan Formation. Damn, Xia Lei felt that he had never been so speechless in his life. "Can't you be more open and honest?" Xia Lei really wanted to say this, but unfortunately, he couldn't. However, since Shen Dinghua said this, her meaning was probably very clear. She didn't want Guanshan to join the Tan Formation and have too much to do with them. However, every time Guanshan just passed by and killed them all, Xia Lei flexibly changed his way of thinking. She didn't want them to take the initiative to look for Guanshan to do things. She wanted to maintain the status quo and wait for Guanshan to be willing to take the bait and help. Right? Xia Lei couldn't help but think bitterly in his heart. This is really a kind of what I give you is yours. If I don't give it to you, you can't snatch it. What else could he do? If he said no now, he might say that he wanted to go to Wallace's restaurant tonight and eat 10 set meals, which didn't have a toilet, and do it. Xia Lei happily took out a form and a contract and said, "It's okay. This time, I'm mainly here to ask if you want to get a special position as a non-staff member. The Tan Formation's function is not the same as that of a normal law enforcement agency. We won't let you solve cases or anything like that." Guanshan didn't understand and asked, "Then why are you giving me this position?" He tentatively guessed, "Is it because of the bust that night?" Encountering a supernatural event was considered a setting for people in the circle and so on. Xia Lei muttered, "To a certain extent, yes." The fight on the bus made them completely certain that Guanshan was at least a sea level and that he was on the same side as them. Guanshan touched his chin and looked at the form again. "I see. Then do I have any obligations?" Xia Lei looked at Shen Dinghua and shook his head with a smile. "No, you just have to sign in at our Hangzhou branch regularly. There are also welfare subsidies." Guanshan's eyes lit up. "Subsidies? How much?" Xia Lei thought for a moment and said, "According to your current level, it's 200,000 yuan a month." Guanshan was stunned and almost dropped the pen in his hand. "How much?" PS1. "Thank you to you, Miao. Xiuqin on 98th Street. How much you want to compose 4 poems, and West Flying East Floating East for their tips." PS2. "Put a bowl here, looking forward to it." Chapter 65. F*CK. Guanshan felt that this was the only word that could perfectly express his feelings at the moment. 200,000 a month? You call this a welfare subsidy? Then how many people are receiving official salaries? He didn't even dare to think about this number. And this 200,000 was basically given to him directly without him doing anything. From an emotional point of view, Guanshan even had the thought of this Xia Lei can't be a scammer, can he? But from a logical point of view, this was impossible. Guanshan calmed down and thought to himself, now that things have come to this, the only explanation is huge hush money. Come to think of it, the Tan Formation often did this to prevent witnesses of paranormal events from telling the truth. Who would complain about getting 200,000 a month for free? There is also a clause in the contract that stated that if any information related to the Tan Formation was leaked, the subsidy would no longer be provided. For the sake of money, no idiot would dare to leak it. However, it seemed that the 10 formation's funding was really abundant. Then, there were two possibilities. One was that the higher-ups really valued this department, and the other was that this department was a high-risk occupation. Guanshan felt that it was a combination of both, but the former was definitely more important. Stopping the spread of panic was actually a very important thing. For example, the famous water monkey rumor had caused a long period of social unrest in the last century, and even caused the suspension of production in some areas. Although he didn't know whether this matter had anything to do with the existence of the 10 formation, this department must have a purpose to prevent similar things from happening again. Thinking of this, Guanshan felt relieved. Xiaolei saw that Guanshan was a little stunned, and then his expression kept changing, but he wasn't surprised. A hero was stumped by a penny, and it was the same for hero ability users. Xiaolei was quite confident in the welfare of ability users, but in exchange for this welfare, countless members of the 10 formation were sacrificing themselves. Every year, there were at least 30 new ability users who were D-class or above. However, even with such a high salary, there were very few who were willing to join the 10 formation. It would be a miracle if there were 5 out of 30. Most people, even if they had superpowers, only wanted to continue hiding in the crowd and live their lives. They would rather join some small organizations among the people than join the official 10 formation. What was even more ridiculous was that among the 5 that joined, there might not be any abilities suitable for combat. This was the current predicament of the 10 formation. The Yohao group, which was in charge of the Hangzhou area, only had 50 paranormals in total. There were only 3 paranormals of Class C and above. They were the instructor Xiaolei, the captain of the first group, Gao Yi, and an ex-criminal of the 4th group. As for the killer bees, the top 10 worker bees were all C rank, and all of them had abilities suitable for combat. Although the killer bees were active all over the country, the Yohao group was already unable to deal with them when they concentrated part of their forces in one place. Even if they asked for help from other areas or their superiors, they wouldn't get a quick response. This was because other areas were also dealing with other ability users, and it would take some time for them to dispatch manpower. For example, the barrier master screen, who was currently helping out, had rushed over from other places to help. She was only able to borrow Xiaolei's help because she used to be his partner. Although it was frustrating to say this, the fact was that people with powerful abilities were often more inclined to be criminals than heroes. Therefore, whenever they met someone with a chance, even if it was risky, they would try to get them to join the 10 formation. They were really short of ability users who could fight. Xiaolei stretched out 2 fingers and solemnly repeated, 200,000 a month. If you're worried that it's fake, you can come with me to the branch to sign in and receive your allowance. It's not far. It's only half an hour's drive away. Guanshan hesitated for a moment and said, okay. He asked Shen Dinghua to wait at the newspaper office and reported to President Li. Then, he drove with Xiaolei and the others to the Hangzhou branch of the 10 formation. It was worth mentioning that when they went out and waited at the elevator, they met Lu Ping, who was going to the toilet. The young man who sat in front of Guanshan's desk was very good at gossip. Lu Ping opened his eyes wide and looked at the few strong men beside Guanshan, as well as Xiaolei, who was talking and laughing with him. His gaze focused on the military rank on Xiaolei's shoulder, and he had an expression that said, I don't understand, but I'm shocked. The group quickly took the elevator and left. In the toilet, Lu Ping looked at the tiles in front of him and thought about how Jiang Xian, who had quarreled with Guanshan, was still in the hospital. He suddenly realized with excitement, so that's how it is. F***ck, I spilled it. Therefore, on that day, everyone in the Hangzhou Evening News knew about the terrible rumor that Guanshan had the 3-year period is up. The Dragon King has returned and will soon take over a big family. As for the fact that Guanshan had only been at the newspaper office for half a year during his internship, no one cared anymore. When Guanshan came out of the 10 formation branch, it was already an hour later. This branch was right next to the police station. The 10 formation badge was hanging on the door, and the words, serving the people, were written in large letters in front of the door. The facilities were not much different from ordinary government agencies, but the area was relatively small. It looked like an office, and no other Tin formation personnel could be seen. The sun was shining at the entrance, and it was cold and cheerless. There was only a gatekeeper listening to the radio. Guanshan's worries were basically gone when he arrived here. He was just a little puzzled as to why he had never heard of the existence of this branch before. The registration procedure was quite complicated, but the transfer of money was straightforward. Xia Lei personally sent Guanshan back to the newspaper office. Before leaving, he gave him his mobile phone number and specially reminded him, if you encounter any problems in your life or work, just call this number. Don't keep it in your heart, and don't face it alone. The Tan Formation treats its members like a family. If you have any problems, just say it directly. He was like an old mother who was afraid that a naughty child would cause trouble. He earnestly and kindly reminded him again and again. Guanshan's mouth twitched, and his expression was subtle. He felt that the other party was a little overly concerned, but he still said, I will. Thank you very much. Xia Lei nodded and heaved a sigh of relief, as if a load had been lifted off his mind. Then he glanced at Shun Dinghua, who was standing at the entrance of the building, and his heart tightened again. This matter is not over. It's just the beginning. Xia Lei sighed and drove away. Guanshan walked over and took the umbrella from Shun Dinghua's hands. He opened it to help block the sun and turned on the navigation on his mobile phone. Did the president say what the content of my fire protection topic is like? Do you want to edit it? Shun Dinghua blinked and smiled. No, she's quite satisfied. After finishing the copywriting, we can hand it over to the art department. Really? That's pretty good. With Brother Peng's help with the copywriting, it shouldn't be a big problem. Guanshan nodded and showed the navigation interface to Shun Dinghua. Next, let's go to the house of the nail house's wife to take a look. PS1, clang clang, full of vitality. PS2, thank you to Bailey Qingfeng, Xingyu Li, Shuyu 2020008070528272214, phone call, and ending for your tips. Chapter 66. The holdout Qin Deguang was the only resident in the apartment near Zhao Hong's house. Because he refused to move, the demolition office and various media came to harass him. His wife and daughter were so annoyed that they ran to their parents' house to seek refuge. But even so, Qin Deguang still refused to leave. He stubbornly drew a circle in 704. According to the people who tried to communicate with him in the past, this guy claimed that he had stockpiled food at home for several months and vowed to fight the demolition authority to the end. But someone calculated that with the average usable space of this apartment, he could only store food for 2 months at most. Moreover, before the demolition, he had no record of going out to buy. What about hoarding food for a few months? It must be a bluff. He did stockpile food, but it was definitely not that much. So during this period of time, no one gathered near the apartment. Anyway, when Qin Deguang ran out of food, he would naturally have to come out. At that time, they would use some means to prevent him from returning, and the matter would naturally be resolved. The media also had this idea and waited for him to come out. Guanshan looked at the information and did not know whether to laugh or cry. This looks like a Don Quixote character with a bit of bitterness and a bit of humor. But Guanshan could not quite laugh, because he remembered the eyes behind the door that stared for a long time. It was a bit scary. It was not as funny as it was described. In fact, it was not difficult to figure it out. How could a person who had been in a closed environment for a long time, constantly harassed, and even abandoned by his friends and family, not have any abnormalities? This Qin Deguang, could it be that there's something wrong with his mind? The more Guanshan recalled the scene, the more he felt that Qin Deguang must have stared at him from behind the door for a long time, silently watching his various actions outside the door. Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. Guanshan felt a chill in his heart. But fortunately, this time they were not looking for Qin Deguang, but for his wife and child. Qin Deguang's wife's name is Haning. Her family is in Han Village. It's quite a remote place. A few media reporters have come here to look for it, but they couldn't find it. For some reason, the information recorded on the map is wrong. It hasn't been changed for many years, and the terrain is very complicated. Guanshan explained to Shun Dinghua. He turned off the navigation and opened the photo attached to the document. It was a simple hand-drawn topographic map. This is the real map. This map was drawn by Jiang Xian using money to find a local who had already gone out. It had to be admitted that Jiang Xian was indeed qualified to be the deputy editor by relying on his own background. His natural connections and financial advantages allowed him to easily obtain the truth that most people couldn't. Therefore, even if he did nothing in the office, he would not be fired. He could even talk back to Li Jiying. Of course, the fact that Jiang Xian was born into a good family did not conflict with the fact that Jiang Xian was an idiot. If not for the fact that Jiang Xian was already in the hospital, Guanshan would have found a gunny sack in the middle of the night and put him in a difficult situation for the forensic doctor. At this moment, Guanshan and Shun Dinghua were sitting on a bus heading to Han Village. Through the window of the bus, they could see that the roadside was full of fields and hills. After 3 hours of trekking, taking the subway and the bus, they crossed several districts before arriving here. Xiao Shan, look, there's a kitten over there. Shun Dinghua came over and pointed outside the window. On the ridge of the field, not far away, there was a dragonly cat sitting there. It licked its paws, shook its ears, and looked over. It actually had the rare heterochromatic pupils. However, it was not as beautiful as the expensive breeds. One of its eyes was light brown, and the other was black. Guanshan was stunned. It's quite a cute kitten, but it should be raised by someone. Its fur looks very shiny. Shun Dinghua looked at the cat and smiled. Xiao Shan, let's raise a cat in the future, okay? Guanshan nodded casually. Okay, an orange cat is pretty good, just like you. Shun Dinghua puffed up her cheeks and stared at him. Are you trying to say that I eat too much? Guanshan said very calmly. I'm saying that orange cats are as cute as you. What are you thinking? As they chatted, the bus arrived at the station. The two of them got off the bus and followed the hand-drawn map. After a while, they finally found the entrance to Han Village deep in the bamboo forest. The village in front of them looked a little run down. The road was not paved with cement. It was a mix of sand and dirt. Most of the houses were single-story, brick and tile houses. There was moss on the walls and all kinds of telephone numbers for advertisements. There was almost no one on the road, but they could hear dogs and poultry barking. It doesn't look like it's isolated from the world. Guanshan looked at the telephone poles in the village. There was electricity and mobile phone signal. This place could only be said to be a remote place. There might have been a rural tourism development, but it was ruined by the lack of updated maps. Click. Shun Dinghua took a picture with her camera. Guanshan looked and was stunned. In the corner of the house in the picture, there was a dragon Li with heterochromatic pupils. Guanshan's pupils contracted. This cat, isn't it the one on the ridge? A dragon Li with heterochromatic pupils was so obvious that it was impossible to mistake it. However, when Guanshan looked up, there was nothing in the corner. His eyelids twitched. This Han village was at least 1 or 2 kilometers away from the field. They had taken a bus here. How did this cat get here? It's another cat. Sure enough, Shun Dinghua also noticed this. Then she smiled and said, Does it know the shortcut? It should be a cat raised by someone here. Guanshan thought about it. It didn't make sense. No matter how fast the bus was, it had to go by the road. A cat could take a shortcut. Okay, a local cat, very strong. He thought that he was overthinking. He walked in and said, Let's find out where Han Ying's family is. We can ask a villager. The two found an old man passing by without much effort. Han Ying, the old man mumbled. He thought about it and said, Oh, you mean Han Liangjuan's daughter? She got married a long time ago. Guanshan nodded immediately. Yes, we're her friends. She got married, but we heard that she went back to her family with her daughter. We came to find her. Back to her family? The old man was stunned and frowned. When did this happen? Why haven't I heard about it? Guanshan was also stunned. Think about it again. She should have gone back to her family. The old man waved his hand and said confidently, No way. Han Village is not a big place. Everyone would know if someone went in and out. I don't know. That means that no one came back. He pointed in a direction. If you don't believe me, you can go to her house and see. PS1. Thank you ending, BOXHBF for your tips. PS2. Tickets, 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 tickets. Chapter 67. Guanshan and Shanjilie followed the old man's directions and found the house belonging to Han Ying's family. Among the many houses in the village, this row of houses was not bad. It had 3 floors, and there were potted plants in the yard. The exterior walls were obviously whiter than other places. Han Ying's house was among them, and there was a sign that read, Liangjun Homestay on the door. Guanshan was not surprised that such a backward village had a homestay. In order to understand the Han family situation, he had chatted with the old man for a while and found out that the Han family did have a farmhouse. However, it was not in the village, but near the bamboo forest at the back of the mountain. A homestay was, of course, a part of the amenities. The map didn't show the wrong address, but it directly showed the farmhouse area. If outsiders did not know, they would not be able to find the original location of the Han family village. Guanshan suspected that the reason the village was so shabby was not because it was poor, but to create a rustic atmosphere. After all, people nowadays advocated returning to nature. Guanshan walked forward and knocked on the door. Seeing that there was no one in the yard, he shouted, "Is anyone there?" "Yes." Someone answered immediately. A tan, middle-aged man walked out of the house and opened the yard door. When he saw them, he smiled and asked, "Lodging?" This man was Han Ying's father, Han Liangjun. Guanshan and Shun Dinghua were each carrying a backpack. Shun Dinghua even had a camera. They were indeed no different from other backpackers who came to stay. Guanshan saw that it was getting late, so he said, "Lodging? How much for a night, boss?" Han Liangjun stretched out his hand and said, "Cheap, 50 yuan per person will do." Guanshan took out a 100 yuan note from his backpack and handed it over. As a reporter, it was normal for him to run around. Although he had not been there many times, he had learned from the experience of his predecessors. If they were going to a remote place, they definitely had to bring cash, but they could not bring too much. Guanshan added, "1 room will do." Shin Dinghua turned her head in a teasing manner, her eyes clearly saying, "Shaoshan, you're not being honest." Guanshan glanced at her without changing his expression, then turned around and pretended not to see her. He sighed helplessly in his heart and silently chanted that this was for the sake of safety, for the sake of safety. Han Liangjun welcomed the two into the house and called his wife out to entertain them. The middle-aged woman was also very enthusiastic. "You came at the right time. I haven't cooked yet. I'll cook for the 2 of you later." Although the interior of the house was not well decorated, it was clean and tidy. Guanshan sat on a chair, looked around the room, and asked, "Just the 2 of you? Can you handle it?" Han Liangjun poured 2 cups of tea and said, "Sai, there aren't many people here. What's there to be busy about?" That meant that there were only 2 of them. Guanshan's heart suddenly sank. Qin Deguang had clearly said that Han Ying had brought her daughter, Qin Yaoyao, back to her parents' home. And since he said that there had been no sound of a woman or a child in 704, this meant that Han Ying and Qin Yaoyao were indeed gone. But they did not return to the Han village. It had been a week or so. Even if they walked, they would have reached it. Where did they go? Did they go missing in an accident? For the media, this was indeed a big gain, but for the couple in front of him, it was unfortunate news. However, he could not jump to conclusions so quickly. Considering that Han Ying and her daughter could have left because they could not stand the media's harassment, it was also possible that they asked their parents for help. Guanshan pondered for a moment and said, "Actually, we were introduced by Han Ying. She said that she would be at home. Why don't I see her?" "Ying?" Han Liangjun was stunned. His expression changed for a moment. "Isn't she in Binjiang? Why is she here? She has been married for 7 years and hasn't returned. Why is she back now? Hasn't returned to her parents' home for 7 years?" Guanshan frowned. Why did he feel that something was wrong? She had not returned for 7 years. Could she have returned because of the media's harassment? But Han Liangjun's expression was unnatural. He seemed to be guilty. It was possible that he was lying. Guanshan decided to observe further. He smiled and said, "Maybe I heard wrongly, but I did hear about this place from her. Speaking of which, your farmhouse here is doing well." Guanshan changed the topic to the farmhouse construction. The slightly stiff atmosphere suddenly livened up. But because they were talking about Han Ying, The couple's conversation was not as natural as before. After a while, they were led to a room upstairs after dinner. The room was simple and unadorned. It was not big, so the bed was a standard single bed. Guanshan pondered for a moment. He moved a chair over and decided not to sleep. In a corner of the Han village. Meow. The dragon Li, with heterochromatic pupils, jumped down from the roof and walked lightly to Meng Ting, who was smoking at the back of the house. Meng Ting squatted down and reached out to touch the smooth fur on the back of the dragon Li. He said, "Can you tell the strength of this guy?" The dragon Li bent its body and rubbed against his palm. It shook its head and said, "I can't tell. His footsteps are very light. His body condition is not like that of a meat-based ability user at all. He is completely like an ordinary person. It's very strange." Its voice was shrill. It was using a cat's vocal cords to speak human language. It sounded very strange. Meng Ting was also puzzled. Yes, this guy can withstand the pressure of 2,000 degrees of hot molten iron with his body and tear open the body of a C-class immortal's relic with his bare hands. But he can be hurt by ordinary weapons. This does not match the performance of a meat-based ability user under normal circumstances. He held the cigarette in his mouth and looked serious. But it is also possible that this is the characteristic of his ability. He has extremely strong self-healing ability and strength. The price is that he does not have physical strength, and the duration of his ability is not long. More importantly, he does not know how to deal with special abilities. For example, the little invisible of the Taiyan formation. The dragon Li said, "He is very strong." Meng Ting threw the cigarette on the ground. "You don't have to say it. Most of the top 10 worker bees have died in his hands. The experimental body that we spent so much time on has also failed. It is all because of him. Otherwise, why would the organization let us come here?" Meng Ting's code name was Drone 9, and the dragon Li was codenamed Drone 10. In a bee colony, the drone bees were only responsible for mating with the queen bee. They had no other abilities. But among the killer bees, the drone bees represented gene samples. The most important raw material for all the prototypes of the sublimation sugar and the artificial experimental body of a meat-based ability user was the blood of the drone bees. Because their abilities were superior enough and their abilities were strong enough to be used as samples. But now, they were going to kill a meat-based ability user who did not have an energy rank. PS1. Thank you to the face-blind and road addict Delan Go. I have a 50 chance with God's retribution and book friend 201-709-16-12550-8415 for their tips. PS2. Double monthly ticket tomorrow is the last day. Autumn Pear Cream, Eager. Chapter 68. In order to deal with one person, they sent out 2 drones. The organization really values this Guanshan a lot. Meng Ting stamped out the cigarette, but under his foot, and crushed it. Meow. Lily licked its paws. I still think they don't value him enough. He almost killed all the worker drones by himself, although those were just poor bugs that could be replaced at any time. More importantly, the Iron Foundry's experimental base was also completely destroyed. That experimental subject used the meltdown gene that was traded from the sky screen with great difficulty. The Esper, with the physical ability that was accelerated by the sublimation sugar, was repeatedly soaked in molten iron for an entire month and tortured to the point of death. Only then was there an individual that almost succeeded. Lily spread its hands. In the end, the core was destroyed in less than 20 minutes after it came out of the furnace. Although, strictly speaking, it was a failed product without intelligence, it still took a lot of effort from the organization. Don't you think the king bee is angry? Lily gloated. If it weren't for the fact that the others were guarding other experimental sites and didn't have time to come over, I think the king bee would have called everyone over. I'm afraid he can't take this treatment. Meng Ting snorted in a low voice. In my opinion, the meltdown gene itself is not something that these low-level ability users can take. The direction of this experiment was wrong from the beginning. Lily said, "You said that. When the boss investigates, don't say that I was there." The so-called boss was naturally Drone 1, an A-level physical ability user with a brain development ability. He had no combat power, but almost all the results of the killer bee were based on his research. Meng Ting said impatiently, Okay, let's deal with this Guanshan first and take his gene. Even if I take off my clothes and dance in front of him, he won't care about me, let alone question it. Lily wagged its tail. Why are you in such a hurry? He's very vigilant. He may not sleep tonight, so it's difficult for me to activate my ability. In this case, it can only last for half an hour at most. You have to be careful. Li Li's superpower was called Soul Catcher and belonged to the special type. He could separate a person's consciousness from their body and form a ghost-like existence. This ghost-like existence could not be seen by ordinary people, but it was in a semi-corporeal state and could touch and use objects in the real world. At the same time, this ghost would gain the ability of Fire of Retribution, which would cause great damage to the mind. This was undoubtedly a special attack for some physical ability users. Therefore, in essence, Li Li's ability should be used for amplification. However, once soul assimilation was activated, the target would not be able to return to his body, nor would he be able to interfere with his own body. At this time, once the physical body died, the consciousness would also be destroyed. As for the person whose soul was captured, their physical body would be like a shell, waiting to be slaughtered. Therefore, as long as the target was killed during this period of time, everything would be over. Of course, it must be mentioned that the reason why Li Li was in the cat's body was related to this ability. Because one day, he suddenly had an idea and used this ability on himself. Coincidentally, one of Li Li's enemies came to the door that day. When he saw Li Li lying in the room, he was naturally overjoyed. He directly killed Li Li with a white knife, and a red knife came out, ending Li Li's life. However, perhaps because Li Li was the host and receiver of the ability at the same time, he did not die with his body. Instead, he became a lonely ghost for a short time. Li Li floated in a daze for a while. When he realized that he would continue to collapse if he did not find a body, there was only a stray cat in front of him that was dying. The result could be imagined. He could only lodge in the body of this dragonly cat, and he did not dare to use this ability on himself anymore. Meng Ting waved his hand and said, Don't be so nervous. Guanshan is almost defenseless against psychic abilities. This has been proven many times. The Taiyan formation has so many evaluations and tests of psychologists. How many times has the D-level Little Invisible been sent to him? And Worker B6 illusion at that time. It was almost a face-to-face encounter, but he fell into it without hesitation. He urged, There will be changes if we delay. Hurry up. Li Li frowned. He naturally still felt that he had to be more cautious. It was true that he fell into the illusion directly, but it was quickly dispelled later. This meant that the other party must have a way to deal with psychic abilities. But today, with Meng Ting's cooperation, it should be fine. Meng Ting's ability was Death's Scythe. He was like the Scythe of Death. As long as he was activated, once he touched the other party, he could directly kill them. However, although it sounded very fierce, his ability was also very limited. He could only use it once a day, and it would only take effect within 3 seconds of activation. After 1 minute of activation, he would fall into a state of paralysis, unable to move. It was an ability that if he did not kill the opponent, he would immediately be killed by the opponent. Before Meng Ting joined the Killer Bees, he was an assassin who worked for others. He relied on this ability to make a name for himself. After that, he also used this ability to kill a B-grade mutant, causing people to tremble in fear. No matter how Meng Ting thought about it, he felt that this mission was in the bag. Li Li used Soul Capture on Guanshan, making his body temporarily immobile. If I just walk over and touch him, won't Guanshan be dead? Is there any suspense? There's none. Li Li leaped up and jumped onto the windowsill of the guest room on the 2nd floor. A pair of heterochromatic eyes looked at Guanshan, who was sitting inside, emitting a strange red light. Soul Capture. Guanshan was sitting on the chair when he suddenly heard a shrill and miserable cat's cry. He immediately turned his head to look, but saw the strange dragonly cat that he had seen twice before squatting outside the window. The dragonly cat was only a dark silhouette in the night. The The cat's eyes stared straight at him, glowing with a strange red light. This scene was strange, eerie, and terrifying, overlapping with countless horror movies. F***CK. Guanshan was so scared that he missed half a beat. He almost immediately jumped up from the chair. In his mind, he had the embarrassing thought of, should I shamelessly ask Comrade Shun to lend me a bed to hide in tonight? The voice of the simulator rang in his mind. Scene scan complete. Generating horror game. Generated horror game. Soul departure. Plot loading. Please wait. Plot loading complete. You have become a ghost. Be careful. The Grim Reaper is behind you. Asterisk note. Only by killing the final boss can this simulation end. Guanshan suddenly felt the world spinning. His body was like a piece of clothing slowly being taken off his body. As for himself, he fell forward. Before he could steady himself, he saw his own translucent palm. I become a ghost? P.S. Float behind the reader, grab the ticket, and run. Chapter 69. Guanshan looked at his palm, which had suddenly become transparent. He was caught off guard when he heard the words, "You have become a ghost," from the simulator. His face was instantly dumbfounded. In the previous instance dungeon, he had been playing the role of a ghost wandering the borders of hell. Now, he had suddenly become a ghost. Could it be that he had acted out the real and the fake? Damn! Guanshan lowered his head to examine himself and found that his entire body had become translucent. He felt as light as a feather, and his feet were not touching the ground. Additionally, he turned his head and saw his familiar, yet unfamiliar face. However, it was him who had fallen asleep on the chair with his eyes closed. If he were to cosplay as Maori Kagoro in this state, it would definitely be a godly return. With just one glance, Guanshan felt that something was amiss. He fell into deep thought. After another glance, he was suddenly enlightened. Damn, why is the HP bar on my main body? Guanshan stared dumbfoundedly at the HP bar floating above his body. At that moment, the HP bar in the upper left corner of his interface had disappeared. It had moved to the top of his main body and became the HP bar of his main body. Guanshan was puzzled. What is the meaning of this? According to this plot setting, didn't I become a ghost? Why is my main body not dead? As he was feeling puzzled, his surroundings rapidly changed. The walls transformed into cells made of human limbs, while the floor beneath his feet transformed into layers of sticky blood pools. The end point was the chair that Guanshan's main body was sitting on. The chair had transformed into an execution chair of shackles. An empty rope hovered above it, and the long rope extended to who knows where. It was as if Guanshan was going to be sentenced to death immediately. Guanshan pondered for a moment and roughly understood what this scene meant. I'm indeed not dead. However, the Grim Reaper could not bear to see a scourge like me. So, he decided to execute me first and report later. Before I die, his soul will be captured first. Then he will kill my body. It's impossible for me to run away with my body, so this time I need to fight in this area and protect my body. What kind of crime did I commit to deserve this VIP treatment? Just as Guanshan was about to grumble, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He wondered if there would be any negative effects from his current state. After all, she was already a ghost. Could it be that she couldn't touch physical objects? He immediately checked his equipment column and found that his weapons were not locked. The only two items that were marked as unusable were neural magnetic field, temporary, and the special metal pieces that came with it. He was immediately relieved. Guanshan nodded. That's understandable. After all, I'm a ghost now. I don't even have a brain, so where will my nerves come from? It won't affect me much. However, there seems to be an additional status. Only then did Guanshan see the prompt that followed the opening remarks. You have received Hellfire status. Temporary. Guanshan explained the details. Fire of Karma. Effect. Additional. Accumulated monster kills *10% damage. Current monster kills 75. Description. What can't kill you will only make you stronger. Guanshan was very pleased. That's an increase of 7. 5 points each time. It's better than nothing. At least it's a buff. By the way, why haven't the monsters come yet? Guanshan suddenly looked around with some doubts. This dungeon was obviously a tower defense dungeon. He was prepared to fight at any time, but it had been a while and the monsters still hadn't come. The walls and windows of this cell had been sealed. The only way the monsters could enter was through the cell door. According to the plot prompt, that's indeed the case. The Grim Reaper is behind me. Well, according to the orientation of my seat, my back is facing the door. Guanshan felt that the difficulty of this boss must be too high, so it gave him enough time to prepare. Naturally, he had to make good use of it. Guanshan analyzed it carefully and found that some of his skills could not be used. For example, skills that were linked to health points and healing accessories were all useless because of the transfer of health points. Guanshan finalized his strategy. If that's the case, it means that I'm invincible now. Then I'll go all out. He took out his weapons, a Glock in one hand and a chainsaw in the other. Then, he directly replaced Healing Talisman with Strange Mark. Since he had become a ghost, it meant that this dungeon should be a ghost-type dungeon, and the Grim Reaper was one of them. Strange Mark. Effect. Unknown. Description. A metal mark that looks different from all angles. Some beings that don't belong to this world avoid it. Guanshan looked at the mark that appeared on his spiritual body's clothes and touched it. It was still cold. Although the effect is unknown, the description is very clear. Anyway, it should mean that there's a chance to avoid damage. Then he put on the mask of pain. The texture of the mask was soft and had a texture that was close to skin. However, it was wrinkled like a clown's face. The thick makeup was pale and strange. His cheeks and nose were painted red. The corners of his mouth were pulled down, and blood-red tears flowed down his eyes. The two magic pattern drawing that are related to health points are useless. The remaining one is to reduce damage, and the other is to become lucky. Guanshan pondered for a moment and decided to use the become lucky option depending on the situation. After all, he could still use the Xidagarba statue as shield to reduce damage. It was a good opportunity to test out the effect of this metaphysical buff. Okay, there's still the most important step. Guanshan set up a beast trap at the entrance of the cell. He was sure that the monster would receive a big surprise once it entered. Perfect. Guanshan took a deep breath and readied himself. He stood facing the door, ready for battle. Done. Lily jumped down from the windowsill and licked its claws. It turned to Meng Ting and said, "Go. I'll leave the rest to you." It muttered. This guy really didn't have any resistance before he was soul-sucked. It seems that the information is true. He really has no way of dealing with the trait type. Meng Ting sneered. "What did I say? You just wait here. I'll go up and kill him in 5 minutes." As he spoke, he went around the back of the house and planned to go up the stairs from the front door. Lily was stunned and ran a few steps. "You're not going up directly?" Meng Ting waved his hand and leisurely pushed open the door of the Han family's courtyard. "What's the hurry? It's not gentlemanly to climb the wall. Isn't this Guanshan very arrogant? He killed half of the worker bees alone and destroyed an entire experimental site." Meng Ting looked at the room on the second floor and revealed a cruel smile. The murderous intent in his eyes was almost shooting out a cold light. "Then I'll be in front of him. He'll watch me get closer, and then I'll kill him with one finger. I'll let him experience the feeling of being crushed." PS1. Thanks to Thousand Fantasy Sakura, Bailey Chingfeng, Aries God, Ceterdith T, Book Friend 20210804084528265 for their tips. PS2. Continue to ask for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 70. Meng Ting quietly walked into the house and easily opened the door to both the inside and the outside. The Han Liangjun family's homestay had 3 floors. The top 2 floors were used as guest rooms. The couple had directly converted the storeroom on the first floor into a bedroom. The old-fashioned door lock in the village was basically useless to Meng Ting. Although he had not undergone physical enhancement and could directly twist the lock off with his own strength, it was not necessary. Although he had not taken on any assassin job for a long time after working for the killer bees, he was still very familiar with this little trick of opening doors. Quietly, like a real Grim Reaper, elegantly and silently taking away a person's life. This was the killing creed that Meng Ting believed in. Therefore, Although Meng Ting's attitude was very arrogant and felt that it was necessary to humiliate Guan Shan enough to kill him, he would not complicate matters. It was enough to kill Guan Shan alone. Meng Ting took the spare key to the guest room and knocked the Han Liangjun couple out. He walked up the stairs step by step and looked at the door at the corner. He could almost imagine the scene in the room at that moment. Guan Shan must be very confused and at a loss, right? He looked at his body that had lost control and must know that the enemy had come. He wanted to go back, but there was no way. He was anxious and could only go in circles. The enemy was approaching step by step, but he could not do anything. This feeling, it must be very hopeless, right? Li Li's ability was to make those who thought they were strong lose their ability to rely on, destroying their self-confidence and self-esteem in one fell swoop. Sometimes the special branch was just so unreasonable. And now I'm here. You will understand what it means to be truly unreasonable. Meng Ting chuckled and calmly opened the door with the key, then pushed the door open and entered. However, the person that greeted him was not Guan Shan. In the dark and dim room, a pale and distorted clown's face was illuminated by the faint blue moonlight outside the window. This face was wrinkled, as if a completely peeled-off human face was forcefully put on another face. The white heavy makeup was uneven, and even some skin color could be seen at the edges. The clown had a comical face makeup, but the corners of his mouth were drooping. He had applied a layer of bright red lipstick. Traces of blood flowed down from his eyes and stained his cheeks, as if his face had been splashed with blood. The clown seemed to be in great pain, but the makeup on his face always maintained a smile. Such a contradictory and strange scene, but it was precisely because of the disharmony that it revealed a trace of strange beauty. Furthermore, this clown's entire body was translucent and covered in a layer of ghostly fire, making it even more terrifying. The clown's eyes were dyed red by the colors around his eyes. It was as if there was a flame burning in his dark eyes, making people feel like they were going crazy. Grim Reaper? It's true, the clown muttered to himself. Then, he purposely said in a mocking tone, "Hey, come over here. I'm waiting for you right here." Woo-woo. He instantly pulled a chainsaw in his hand. The high-speed rotating gears with sharp spikes rubbed against the air, making an extremely terrifying whistling sound. Under normal circumstances, a chainsaw of this length would need to be held with both hands. However, he used one hand as if it was his own arm, and the other hand was holding a pistol. Meng Ting's pupils contracted, his smile froze, and several question marks appeared in his mind. Who the F***CK is this? Who was the one who planned the assassination? Was it me? Or was it this masked clown who looked like he was about to use the chainsaw to dismember a corpse? However, he soon found out. How could a person suddenly appear in the room? Furthermore, this person in front of him had a familiar weapon and was translucent. Meng Ting could guess with his toes. This is Guan Shan. The situation was very different from what Meng Ting had expected. He was shocked. Meng Ting took a closer look and realized that these weapons were indeed the ones Guan Shan often used according to the intelligence. Meanwhile, Guan Shan's unconscious body was still sitting on a chair not far away. Where did Guan Shan get these weapons from? Unless he explained it himself, perhaps no one would know. However, one thing was certain. He was calmer than Meng Ting had imagined. Not only did he quickly master the body of consciousness, he did not even know what was going on. In the case where he was only a body of consciousness, he was able to use his signature spatial ability and take out his weapon to wait for him. Logically speaking, after the body of consciousness was separated from the body after the soul snatch, he would not be able to use his ability. Meng Ting quickly hid the shock in his heart and forced a sneer. It seems that I have underestimated you. To think that you have this ability. However, even if you use your ability in the state of the soul snatch, it won't change the fact that you will be killed by me. It was not that the body of consciousness did not have any combat power. However, because it was only a translucent body, its strength and speed would be greatly weakened. In most cases, it would be equivalent to having none. As long as he could get close to Guan Shan's body in an instant and touch him, then Meng Ting would win. Moreover, Meng Ting had a special item that targeted the body of consciousness. It seems that he knows this too. So, he deliberately set up a diversion and wants to play the empty fort strategy to make me retreat? Impossible. Meng Ting took out a quaint bronze bell that he had already equipped and shook it as he walked toward Guan Shan. Ding ling ling. This bronze bell was called the Soul Snatch Bell. Li Li's ability was named after this bell. Some of its functions were very similar to Li Li's ability. It could interfere with the body of consciousness and even make the body of consciousness leave the body. However, the duration was relatively short. Most of the time, it could make people lose their minds and their souls scatter. For the body of consciousness that had lost the protection of the body, it was very fatal. Ding-ling. Meng Ting shook the bell twice before he lifted one leg and stomped on the floor aggressively. Then, a loud paw sound was heard. A giant trap suddenly appeared on the ground. A total of 4 torsion springs were instantly triggered. 2 ferocious metal semicircles full of huge spikes suddenly closed. Meng Ting was stunned. What? Like a shark that had caught its prey, the spikes that were embedded with each other overlapped and instantly pierced through the muscles and bones of Meng Ting's calf. The terrifying force that followed directly crushed the part of the muscles that were clamped inwardly, and the bones were crushed into slag. It was extremely painful. Meng Ting screamed with a distorted expression. The great pain made his face instantly lose color, and his back was covered in cold sweat. This was a pain that humans could not endure. However, Meng Ting was not an ordinary person. He immediately reached out and pressed the 2 crescent-shaped metals, trying to pry them apart. However, the more he struggled, the more the spikes tore inwards and the pain increased exponentially. Woohoo hit! Guan Shan, who was wearing a clown-like mask, was so happy that he almost patted his stomach. He did not choose to go forward. Instead, he immediately raised the muzzle and aimed at Meng Ting's head and fired 3 shots in a row. Bang, bang, bang. PS1. Thank you, said for the tip. PS2. Quietly approach the sleeping readers and steal their tickets. Chapter 71. The moment Guan Shan fired, the boss information also appeared in front of his eyes. Boss, Grim Reaper, Guide, LV 17. HP 5600800. Description: open eyes, close eyes. Death is just a moment away. The Grim Reaper that was trapped in the beast trap let out a hoarse and terrifying roar. Ouch! It had a shriveled face like a skeleton, pale eyes that burned like willow, the wisps a long neck, and a huge body that was far bigger than the door frame. Its body was made up of countless small limbs, hands, feet, hair, skin, and bones. It was as if they were mixed together in a blender, messily pieced together into a body and 4 larger claws. At the same time, there were many extra parts on its body that were not integrated. They grew out like the branches on the branches, and they were alive to climb the walls of the prison around it. Therefore, its overall shape was more like a giant beast with a bowed body, but it was covered from head to toe with a gorgeous and noble black shawl. It was as if it was emphasizing its identity as the Grim Reaper. At least when it pushed the door open and reached in, Guan Shan also thought that it would be the traditional image of the Grim Reaper. Skeleton, black robe, scythe, who knew that the arm that pushed the door open was actually just an accessory. As for the scythe-shaped sharp bone spurs that stretched out from both sides like the mouths of insects should be the scythe. It could be said that it was very abstract. One of the Grim Reaper's huge claws hooked a pitch-black bell. When it shook, it made an unusually ear-piercing sound like a scream. Although the beast trap set by Guan Shan interrupted the sound, the 2 sounds just now made him feel seriously uncomfortable. Ugh! Guan Shan was not happy for long before he felt nauseous. He felt that his internal organs were churning. He only felt that he was hit by a road roller that fell from the sky. Although there was no pain, he could still feel the distortion and displacement from the inside. More directly, his translucent body was blurred at this moment as if the signal was bad. That bell is a weapon against ghosts. Guan Shan immediately came to this conclusion. He felt a little resentful. Luckily, I was cautious enough and didn't really think that I was invincible. This dog simulator is really full of traps. At this moment, he was incomparably glad that he had predicted this move in advance, maximizing the opportunity for himself to deal damage. Otherwise, if the Grim Reaper continued to ring the bell, Guanshan's ghost body might directly collapse. He was extremely quick-witted. Bang, 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 bang. Thinking of this, Guanshan did not stop. He continued to fire, especially aiming at the claw with the bell. A series of explosions rang out. Amidst the flames, a series of damage values appeared. Coupled with the burning effect, the boss's HP was reduced by another 1,000. The Grim Reaper howled. Its deformed and abstract body swayed left and right as it struggled violently. At the same time, it stretched out its claws in an attempt to pry open the trap. In the middle of its body, there was a slender, baby-shaped skeleton embedded in it. The baby's dark and hollow facial features elongated. It stretched out its tiny arms and took out a heart from its mouth. It held it up and merged it into the Grim Reaper's body. The wounds on the Grim Reaper's body were instantly healed, and its HP also jumped back a little. This guy can heal on its own. Guanshan's pupils constricted. He thought quickly. A level 17 boss with only 8,000 HP. It's normal for it to have some other tricks up its sleeve. But compared to the female swordsman from the other day, its attack power must be ridiculously high. Once it gets close to my body, it's very likely that I'll be killed instantly. But the Mask of Pain needs to be damaged for it to take effect. Do I have to wear it down bit by bit? Guanshan immediately rejected this idea. The beast trap only lasted for 10 seconds, and it was about to disappear. Guanshan was now shooting at the Grim Reaper's weak points. Although the Grim Reaper was restrained on the spot, it was impossible for it to become a wooden dummy. Its body looked huge, but in fact its structure was like a pile of branches, so its actual size was actually not that big. When it struggled and swayed, most of the bullets hit its non-weak points. Once the Grim Reaper moved, it would not be so easy to fight. So, since I can't leave, I might as well use the Xidagarba statue to trick it into attacking once, and then try to finish it off in close combat. After all, I'm in spirit form now. As long as it doesn't use that bell, I can continue to attack. If I can hit its weak points like how I dealt with the chef, then I'll win. Guanshan had just made up his mind when the beast trap disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Guanshan's damage had already reduced the Grim Reaper's HP to less than 4,000. And this was under the condition that the Grim Reaper also had healing skills. The Grim Reaper's 10 seconds of control was the bane of a boss that could only fight in close combat. On one hand, this branch-like body structure was easy to dodge, but on the other hand, it was not stable enough. Of the 4 claws of the Grim Reaper, one of its hind claws was restrained by the trap, and now, one of its front claws was directly broken by Guanshan's concentrated attacks. Clang! Clang! The bell and its front claws fell to the ground together, and the burning ghost fire in the Grim Reaper's eye sockets suddenly rose. It roared and directly pushed open the door, rushing over at an extremely fast speed. Its body, which was bigger than the room, was full of oppression. The Grim Reaper, who had lost its shackles, was like a shadow, and with a swoosh, it arrived in front of Guanshan. Guanshan did not seem to have time to react, and just like that, the Grim Reaper passed by him without blocking it. He was stunned for a moment, and then rushed over. The Grim Reaper leaned back, and its shriveled face was filled with ferocious, killing intent. Then it twisted its body, and its huge, branch-like body with a cloak twisted in mid-air, with a strange sense of beauty. What was fatal was that the 2 sickle-shaped bone spurs were also rotating at the same time. Like 2 blades of a meat grinder, they slashed towards Guanshan's body. This was the Grim Reaper's sickle. Guanshan took a deep breath, and as he rushed forward, he used all the tools and skills he had anticipated. Xidagarba statue, immovable prison. The moment the sickle-shaped bone spurs pierced through Guanshan's body, a shield equivalent to his HP was immediately formed and almost shattered at the same time. Guanshan's pupils constricted, and his scalp went numb. He cursed in his heart. This damage is ridiculous. It's really an instant kill. But now that the arrow was on the bow, he could only stake it all on one throw. Magic rune drawing, blessing. Wong. Guanshan picked up the chainsaw and pulled it. The chainsaw's gears suddenly rotated, making a terrifying sound. My luck has changed. Give me a critical hit. He jumped up, and while the Grim Reaper was focused on killing himself, he stepped on the Grim Reaper's body and pressed down on the baby-shaped skeleton in the middle. PS1. Thank you, Glass Fox, FIPA for your tips. PS2. Continue writing, continue writing. Chapter 72. Meng Ting had never thought that he would fall into such a trap. When he was caught in the trap that suddenly appeared, he knew that he must have fallen into a trap. This Arcanist, without an energy rank, was not as flustered and helpless as he had imagined. On the contrary, he seemed to have come prepared. This is impossible. Meng Ting felt that he had really bumped into a ghost and could not figure it out. He is so King calm and steady. How could he be so easily soul-taken? Mental abilities were very idealistic. This did not only apply to the Arcanist, but also to the person who used the ability. For abilities like no sense of presence and soul-taking, it would be fine if it was an ordinary person who was directly affected. This was a very normal phenomenon. However, as an Arcanist, when they awakened, it meant that their willpower was stronger than ordinary people's. They naturally had a certain level of resistance to such abilities. However, Guanshan acted like an ordinary person. This meant that he had even less willpower than ordinary people. Shouldn't this kind of person be tough on the outside, but timid on the inside? Shouldn't he be brave, but not astute? Based on his experience and Guanshan's various previous achievements, this was what Meng Ting thought. In the end, Guanshan directly acted out a wave of self-contradiction. As such, under the extreme pain, Meng Ting had a very absurd idea. No energy rank and no resistance to special abilities. Could it be that he has no Arcanist and is really an ordinary person? However, this idea was simply nonsense. Guanshan had even used a space-type ability in front of him. How could he be an ordinary person? So, he is actually using himself as bait. He probably fell into a trap to make me lower my guard, and then take the opportunity to ambush me. What a ruthless guy. Meng Ting tried to think to keep himself awake. At the same time, he tried his best to dodge Guanshan's bullets. Although he did not have a physical ability, his body had been modified. His reaction speed and strength had reached the level of a weak D grade. Although he could not dodge all the bullets, it was not a problem for him to dodge his vital parts. The problem was that Guanshan's bullets were incendiary bullets. Not only would they explode, but they would also be covered in liquid incendiary. The wounds on Meng Ting's body had been injured twice. Needless to say, the pain was unbearable. What was even worse was that he had lost a lot of blood. His stamina was rapidly depleting, causing his movements to slow down. There were a few times when he was almost hit in the head. Seeing that the situation was not good, Meng Ting gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. He took out a small syringe that was about 10 centimeters long and injected himself. This thing was given to him by the organization. It belonged to a series of experimental products called Shanhua candy. Compared to the sublimation sugar for ordinary people, this thing for paranormals was called concentrated sublimation liquid. Just as the sublimation sugar could awaken ordinary people's supernatural abilities, the sublimation liquid concentrate could enhance the abilities of superhumans to a certain extent in all aspects. It could even allow Meng Ting to use his ability twice. It was a powerful potion that combined healing and strengthening. However, the raw materials were very precious, so even if it was a drone, only one could be given to each person. I can't believe I've been forced to this point in just one encounter. If I don't kill you today, the reputation of Death Sickle will be ruined. Meng Ting was determined to complete a one-shot kill. His whole body instantly surged with strength. He was just about to stir his muscles to directly pry open the trap when it suddenly disappeared on the spot. Meng Ting was stunned. Then his arm was hit by a bullet and it was broken right away. He looked at the bell on the ground and his own arm. He was furious. Very well, you're dead meat. Meng Ting did not waste any time. Almost in a flash, he came directly to the chair where Guanshan's real body was sitting. Guan Shan, on the other hand, seemed to have not reacted. He stretched out his hand and rushed over. Death's sickle Meng Ting would not give his enemy any chance to breathe. He sneered and quickly stretched out a finger to tap the back of Guan Shan's neck. His finger touched the skin. The real touch almost made Meng Ting laugh out loud. The corner of his mouth raised into a noble smile. Countless times, he had easily taken away a life like this. There was no need for words. He only needed to wave his hand. Meng Ting was very familiar with the following process. In reality, his ability was not instant death on the surface. There was a process to it. First, it was aging. The process of rapid aging was condensed into this moment. Then it was rotting. The body rotted on the spot like a normal corpse and finally turned into ashes. However, if one observed with the naked eye, one could only see him casually tap, and then the opponent turn into ashes. Meng Ting was looking forward to the feeling of Guan Shan turning into ashes in his hands. However, in reality, nothing happened. Meng Ting was stunned. He was sure that he had touched the other party's body. However, there was no change in Guan Shan's physical body in front of him. It was useless. How is this possible? Meng Ting was stunned. For a moment, his expression was ferocious. His worldview was shaken, and he fell into doubt about his own ability. Of course, he did not believe that his ability would fail. Hence, he stretched out his hand again. However, Guan Shan's consciousness had already caught up. He kicked over directly. The force was so great that it kicked Meng Ting to the ground. Buzz buzz, the chainsaw spun at high speed. The man in the clown mask raised the chainsaw high and then pressed it down. Blood spurted out and splattered on the man's body. It merged with the two blood marks on the mask. 3124, an extremely huge blood-red number, appeared in front of Guan Shan's eyes. It was the critical hit he wanted. The blessing runes can really increase luck. Guan Shan was overjoyed. At this moment, his body was covered with white runes, emitting a faint light. In front of him, the baby-shaped skeleton in the middle of the Grim Reaper's body had been cut in half by his chainsaw. The high-speed chainsaw was still stuck in the monster's body. The effect of the poison ointment had also taken effect. It was being reduced by an increasing percentage. Victory was in sight. However, in the next second, the broken limbs of the Grim Reaper that had been kicked to the ground were restored instantly. The wounds were also healing rapidly. Guan Shan watched as the health bar that had been reduced to the bottom was restored in an instant. His eyes widened and his heart sank. F***CK. 2 health bars. What the hell is this? Ha! Do you think it's over? Meng Ting suddenly opened his eyes and sneered. The effect of the concentrated sublimation liquid was only now taking effect. All the wounds on his body healed immediately. He reached out and grabbed the bell at the door. The bell flew directly into his hand. The powerful mental strength that was temporarily granted by the potion even allowed him to possess psychokinesis. Meng Ting stood up again and shook the soul-sucking bell. Ring, ring, ring. Guan Shan once again felt the feeling of being run over by a road roller. His face was ashen and his head was dizzy. His whole body felt like it was on the verge of falling apart. It's over. His mind was scattered and he could not help but want to vomit. In front of him, he saw the Grim Reaper raise its scythe again. On Guan Shan's body, which was flickering like a blurry signal, the white runes became clearer and clearer. You have attracted the gaze of the Void's eyes. The simulator said so. PS1. Thank you readers 20200222093142397 and buy-in for their tips. PS2. You have attracted the gaze of the author. Please offer sacrifice for safety. Chapter 73. You have attracted the attention of the Void's gaze. When Guan Shan heard the prompt from the simulator, his eyes widened and he felt like he was about to vomit blood. It was both physical and psychological. The Grim Reaper's scythe came for his life, and the soul-sucking bell came for his soul. It was a matter of life and death. And now you're telling me that I've attracted the attention of an unknown existence in the void? Don't think I haven't played board games before. As long as a horror game has anything to do with the void, it's bound to be an evil god. being peeped at by an evil god. Look at this, words, it a good thing? You call this getting luckier? Huh. I'm really *% yen. Guan Shan cursed in his heart. In this situation, anyone would say, alas, my life is over. What happened next was something Guan Shan would never forget for the rest of her life. The moment the simulator's prompt sounded, the whole world quieted down. The sound of the chainsaw, the ringing of the bell, the wind, the heartbeat, the sound of breathing, all returned to silence. It felt like when you were targeted by something in a horror movie, you would involuntarily hold your breath and not dare to make a sound. Even the light in the cell dimmed in an instant, as if something had taken it away. A creepy chill climbed all the way from the spine to the back of the head. It was as if a cold and wet hand was touching the skin. It made people want to shiver uncontrollably. However, the extreme sense of danger made the brain sound the alarm, telling the body, don't move, don't move, don't move. It was difficult to describe what kind of feeling it was, because even the mind slowly stopped at this moment. Everything was losing their sense of existence. Meng Ting naturally noticed this abnormality, but he couldn't resist the overwhelming instinctive fear at all. This was fundamentally different from the instinctive training he had received as an assassin, because soon even thoughts had lost their existence. In that case, humans were just meat on the chopping board. However, under such circumstances, only the magic patterns on Guan Shan's body grew brighter and brighter. The strange patterns on his skin gradually merged together, making him look like a burning white torch, extremely eye-catching in the darkness. Perhaps it was because Guan Shan was in spirit form, but he was less affected and could still think. It was as if everything had frozen, turning into a still painting. The only thought that popped up in his mind was, it seems like someone is really watching me. When a person was being stared at, their intuition would naturally sense it. Guan Shan's slow thinking could no longer support him to think of the danger of the situation. He subconsciously turned his eyes and glanced at the source of his sight, the door of the prison cell. The door of the prison cell had been partially destroyed by the Grim Reaper who had barged in earlier. The door had long been broken and was wide open. Outside the door was an eye that was almost 1/3 the size of the door frame. That eye was staring at the two people in the prison cell. Guan Shan froze. He turned his eyes and didn't dare to move, so he directly looked at the eye. The incomparably huge eye moved left and right, then retreated slightly, so Guan Shan saw the other 7 or 8 eyes. In this darkness, the outline that couldn't be seen at all squirmed outside the door. He could vaguely see that this thing was looking into the prison cell with its head tilted. This scene reminded Guan Shan of a child who was lying down and looking sideways at an ant's nest, as if thinking about which one to crush or drown. Guan Shan's forehead and back were full of cold sweat. He was so nervous that he didn't even dare to swallow his saliva. He secretly knew that things were not good, because he was now the prettiest guy in the entire prison cell. Yes, the brightest. Guan Shan felt that he was now a 1-kilowatt light bulb, enough to blind people's eyes. In fact, the eye was indeed staring at Guan Shan and seemed to be a little moved. But then, it noticed a trace of darkness mixed in the light. The strange mark that Guan Shan wore on his body. Even when Guan Shan's entire body was glowing, this metal mark still did its own thing and kept a low profile. But because of this mark was very eye-catching. When I noticed the mark, it actually showed a trace of disgust and even retreated a few steps. It seemed to be very hesitant, and after a while, it finally moved up. Phew! Guan Shan had just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard a chewing sound coming from beside him. F***CK. No way. Guan Shan was shocked and felt a chill down his spine. He looked in the direction of the Grim Reaper. He saw that the Grim Reaper that was about to swing its sickle and reap Guan Shan's life had lost its head at this moment. There was a row of irregular bite marks where its neck was broken, and the sound of chewing and swallowing came from the void. The baby skeleton in the center of the Grim Reaper was showing an expression of extreme fear, but it could not move at all. Then, right before Guan Shan's eyes, the body of the Grim Reaper disappeared bite by bite. When even the last mouthful was gone, Everything around them finally returned to normal. The air also flowed again. Guan Shan felt as if he had been reborn and was about to collapse as he breathed in the fresh air. Ha! Ha! He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and picked up this strange mark. He sighed in relief. Damn, luckily I brought this thing with me. There's also a boss beside me acting as a scapegoat. Otherwise, I would have died. The magic patterns on Guan Shan's body finally extinguished. He smacked his lips and did not know if he was lucky. If I'm lucky, I was almost killed by the boss and was targeted by the evil god. If I'm unlucky, the evil god that was summoned ate the boss. Guan Shan thought about it, and could only say that the blessing magic pattern probably had some use to turn danger into safety. However, how lucky he was and whether it could save him was a mystery. But now, the most important question is, does this boss still count as killed by me? In the next second, the simulator gave the answer. Experience plus 15,000 LV, 12 LV, 13, current experience, 121440000, current health, 4607, final boss has been killed, simulation has ended. This scene will be destroyed. Player, please leave as soon as possible. Countdown, 0:59, great. Guan Shan's eyes lit up, and his spirit was suddenly lifted. This huge amount of experience allowed him to directly level up. Perhaps it was because the evil god was summoned by his skill, so it was also included in the simulation. At the same time, Guan Shan's vision blurred. His entire soul floated back into his body, and his vision changed. Guan Shan jumped up. The first thing he did was to take 2 steps forward and wake up Shen Dinghua, who was still sleeping soundly. The destruction of the simulation scene would affect the real world. He could not let anything happen to Comrade Shen. The girl was half awake and her cheeks were flushed. She rubbed her eyes in a daze. Oh, Xiao Shan, what's wrong? I dreamt that I was eating cake. This greedy cat, Guan Shan, did not know whether to laugh or cry. He directly carried her and ran. There's no time to explain. Let's go first. PS1. Thank you, FIPA, for the tip. PS2. I'm a little hungry as I write. When I think of my empty bowl, I'm very sad. Hint. PS3. Go to Sanjiang next week, then next Friday. There will be 5 chapters starting on that day. Please do not fatten up this week. It's only 1 week. Please give me a first order and then fatten up. Please. This is really important to the author. Hug thigh. Chapter 74. Guan Shan immediately broke free from the chair that was handcuffed to him. He carried Shen Dinghua out of the cell and picked up the items dropped by the boss. In front of him was a long corridor, and on both sides were cells of the same style. The ground and walls were covered in thick dried blood, and various non-Newtonian fluids that needed to be coated were piled up everywhere. There were also souls that had been killed by various torture devices lying in the cells or the corridor. Some are even directly nailed to the wall. It seemed that the theme of this scene was actually more like execution than soul leaving. Of course, only Guan Shan felt disgusted and horrified when he saw these. Although he knew that these were all simulated, these things were real to him, and he couldn't help but feel afraid. For example, Guan Shan still remembered the corpse that was nailed to the wall. It looked terrible, but in fact its original position was just a few strings of garlic and dried chili. But you want him to try his luck? Of course he wouldn't dare. Who knew if these things that were now decorations of the scene would suddenly open their eyes and scare him? Guan Shan, who had always been timid, was always vigilant to avoid losing his composure in front of little Shan. Shen Dinghua buried her head in his arms and curled up like a cat. She squinted her eyes and rubbed against his chest. Her soft cheeks flattened due to the force, making her look chubby. She pouted and said coquettishly, "Oh, I'm not full yet. Xiao Shan owes me a cake." Guan Shan raised his eyebrows. What a good trick to gain something without risking anything. Was a cake in a dream considered a cake? Shen Dinghua looked up at him. Her eyes were a little sleepy and moist. Obviously, she hadn't woken up yet. She suddenly opened her mouth and bit Guan Shan's clothes. She mumbled vaguely, "I'm starving." Okay. If little Shen says it's okay, then it's okay. She's so cute. No matter what she says, she's right. Guan Shan changed his mind without any principles. He reached out to save his clothes from Shan Dinghua's mouth and ran downstairs quickly. As soon as they arrived downstairs, Guan Shan's heart skipped a beat. He sniffled, and his expression became extremely solemn. There was a very strong smell of gas in the air. This is not a smell that would appear in this prison, so it is most likely from real life. Guan Shan's face turned even uglier. When he was fighting upstairs, he used incendiary bombs. Now, he was afraid that it would spread soon, and the concentration of the gas must have been on for a long time. He hurriedly kicked open the door and sent Shen Dinghua out first. He walked back to Han Liangjun and his wife's room and found that both of them were sleeping soundly. He didn't wake them up and directly carried them out with each hand. Han Liangjun woke up halfway and was shocked. Guan Shan had just explained that there might be a gas leak, and he was saving them. The house behind him exploded on the spot, turning into a sea of fire. Han Liangjun looked at the scene in front of him in a daze. He was completely awake. He quickly woke up his wife and shouted, "Fire, fire! Quickly come and put out the fire, call 119. Soon after, the entire village woke up. Chaos ensued, and the place was bustling with activity. Guan Shan helplessly became a supporting character. As the countdown ended, he looked at the ruined homestay and thought, the simulator is still the same simulator. It still likes to explode so much. At the same time, he also felt a bit uncomfortable about the Han couple. He wanted to ask them for some money to rebuild the house. But this was what Han Liangjun said. It's fine. To be honest, this guest house was going to be renovated and rebuilt. The external business information has been stopped. But if there are tourists who come here on their own, like you, we will still serve them, but the price will be cheaper. He pointed at the bamboo forest at the back of the mountain. We have already moved to the farmhouse on the other side of the mountain. We have also bought 2 houses to collect rent. We are really not short of money. We still have to thank you for saving us. How can we let you pay for it? Guan Shan, after all this time, the other party was richer than him. At this point, it would be suspicious if he still insisted on paying. After all, from other people's point of view, he had nothing to do with the gas explosion. If he suddenly insisted on paying, it would be a confession. Guan Shan suddenly thought of the phone number that Xiaolei left. Since it was an official phone number, could he use official channels to compensate in other ways? He could pay for it himself, and he could use the official name. That's a good idea. Guan Shan's eyes lit up. He felt that he had found the right way to use the phone. However, it was the middle of the night. It was not good to disturb them. He would talk about it during the day. Guan Shan first checked the reward settlement interface, but he discovered an incredible situation. Game simulation completed. Soul departure. Final boss killed. 1-1. Rating level. Elite monster killed. 0-1. Rating level. Seeing this, Guan Shan was shocked. What the F***CK? Guan Shan could not believe it. I missed a monster? Where did this elite monster come from? Wait, could it be the cat that was outside the window at the beginning? Guan Shan suddenly found a blind spot and fell in a deep thought. But where did it go after that? Could it be that the correct way to fight the monster is to go to the corridor and find a way to lure the Grim Reaper to follow me to another scenario to kill the cat? F***CK? This is a trap. Guan Shan could not help but give him the middle finger. If that was the case, his rating would drop, and the items that he would receive would not be complete. But there was no other way. Just dealing with the Grim Reaper was already a close call. If another elite monster came, he might die on the spot. He did not know whether this was a good thing or not. Phew! Guan Shan adjusted his mentality and told himself that the difficulty would increase. It was only a matter of time before he missed a monster. For now, he should get used to it. He continued to look at the interface. Obtained items. Soul-sucking bell X1. Retractable knife X1. Grim Reaper's fingerbone X1 inch rating. Excellent. Able to keep most of the obtained items. Due to the bumpy road, your backpack accidentally dropped. Retractable knife X1. My condolences. Obtained reward. Game coins X7. 000. Skill point X1. Unlocked achievement. Missing 1. Unable to kill all the monsters in the scenario for the first time. Achievement reward. Game coins X233. All the rewards have been sent to your backpack. Please check. Calculation complete. Please wait patiently for the next simulation to start. What the F asterisk CK accidentally dropped it. Good God, this dog simulator is a real dog, and it's mocking me. Guanshan's lips twitched. If the simulator had a physical body, it would have been beaten up more than 3 times. But thankfully, from the name, the item that was lost should be the lowest quality item. Xiaoshan, look. Xindinghua's voice suddenly came from the side. She had been squatting by the bushes earlier, but now she was walking toward Guanshan. Guanshan was stunned. He saw that she was holding a dragonly cat in her hand. Xindinghua revealed a cute smile and put the cat on the ground. This is the 3rd time I've seen it. It's fate, right? Xiaoshan, do you want to keep it? The dragonly trembled, took 2 steps forward shakily, and hugged Guanshan's calf. With a sad and mellow tone, it made a weak and helpless sound. Meow. Guanshan did not know if it was an illusion, but he saw the word help in its eyes. PS1. Thank you, Launcher. Ha ha for your tips. PS2. Randomly choose a reader to hug, asking for votes. Eager.